Mr. Smith, I'm sorry. There's nothing more we can do. You have about a week. Trevor Smith's twin sons were dying, 7 years old, 1 week left. The doctor sent them home. 3 days later, Trevor walked into his living room and froze. His sons were laughing. They hadn't laughed in 4 months. And sitting with them on the floor, folding colored paper, was a woman he barely knew. What he saw next broke him, and then healed him. The drive home from the hospital felt like a funeral. Trevor didn't speak. His mother sat beside him in silence. In the back seat, Lucas and Eric stared out the window, too weak to ask questions anymore. At home, everything had changed. Medical equipment filled the living room. Oxygen tanks, IV poles. The house his wife used to fill with laughter now felt like it was holding its breath. Trevor's mother had hired help, a maid named Rachel Jackson. Trevor didn't even look at her. What did it matter? His boys were dying. He spent the next 2 days locked in his office, calling doctors in other countries, researching treatments that didn't exist, praying prayers that felt like they hit the ceiling and fell back down. And then, on the third night, something happened. Trevor was walking past the living room when he heard it. Laughter. He stopped. His whole body went cold. The boys hadn't laughed since before their mother died. Not in months. Not since the chemo started stealing pieces of them. Trevor moved toward the sound like he was walking through a dream. And when he looked into the room, he couldn't understand what he was seeing. Rachel, the maid, was sitting on the floor in her uniform. Lucas and Eric sat across from her, and scattered between them were hundreds of tiny folded birds, paper cranes, red ones, blue ones, yellow ones, covering the floor like hope had exploded. "How many do we have now?" Eric asked. His voice sounded strong, alive. Rachel counted. 243, Lucas smiled. "How many more?" 757, Rachel said. 1,000 total. Then we make our wish. Trevor's knees buckled. He grabbed the doorway to keep from falling. His sons, given 1 week to live, were folding paper, smiling, their eyes bright, their hands moving with purpose. Rachel looked up. She saw him standing there, and instead of explaining, she just said, "Would you like to help us, Mr. Smith?" Trevor couldn't speak. He couldn't move, but somehow his legs carried him into the room. He sank down onto the floor beside his boys. Lucas handed him a piece of paper. "We'll teach you, Daddy." Eric nodded. "It's easy once you know how." Trevor's hands shook as he tried to fold. He got it wrong. The boys laughed, not mean, just gentle, and showed him how to fix it. And something inside Trevor cracked open. Not pain, not grief, something else, something that felt like light breaking through. "What is this?" he whispered to Rachel. She kept folding. "It's a Japanese tradition. Fold 1,000 cranes with a pure heart, and the gods grant your wish." Trevor looked at his sons, their faces glowing, their fingers working. "Do you believe that?" he asked. Rachel met his eyes. "I believe that when we stop waiting to die and start creating something beautiful, miracles have room to happen." Trevor felt tears on his face. He didn't wipe them away. For the first time since the doctor spoke those terrible words, Trevor wasn't thinking about death. He was watching his sons live, and he realized something that shook him to his core. Maybe it wasn't over. Maybe God was still listening. Before we begin, click subscribe, like this video, and tell me where in the world you're watching from. Because I believe some of you watching right now are in your darkest hour, and you need to know. God doesn't always answer the way we expect, but He always answers. Stay with me. They folded for hours. Trevor sat on the floor with his sons, his expensive suit wrinkling, his knees aching against the hardwood. None of it mattered. For the first time in months, his boys were present, really present, not just bodies in beds waiting for the end. Lucas held up his crane, crooked, lopsided, beautiful. "Look, Daddy, I made one." Trevor's throat closed. "It's perfect, buddy." Eric finished his and added it to the pile. "Mine's better." "Is not," Lucas said, but he was smiling. Trevor looked at Rachel. She was folding with quiet precision, her hands moving like they'd done this 1,000 times before. She didn't speak much, just guided them when they got stuck, encouraged them when they got frustrated. "Where did you learn this?" Trevor asked. Rachel didn't look up. Someone taught me a long time ago. Who? Her hands paused, just for a second. Someone I loved. The way she said it made Trevor stop asking. They kept folding. The pile grew. Red birds, blue birds, yellow birds. The room filled with color and something else Trevor couldn't name. Peace, maybe, or grace. Around midnight, Eric's head started to droop. He fought it, blinking hard, trying to keep folding. I'm not tired, he mumbled. Rachel smiled. That's okay. The cranes will be here tomorrow. Lucas yawned. Promise? Promise, Rachel said softly. Within minutes, both boys were asleep on the couch, curled into each other the way they used to when they were babies. Rachel covered them with a blanket, tucked it around their shoulders, smoothed Eric's hair back from his forehead. Trevor watched her. Really watched her for the first time. She moved like a mother, not like hired help. Who are you? He whispered. Rachel straightened. Just someone who knows what it's like to run out of time. You've lost someone. It wasn't a question. Rachel's face changed. Something deep and old moved behind her eyes. Yes. A child? Rachel looked at the sleeping boys. A daughter, Maya. She was 10. Trevor felt the air leave his lungs. I'm sorry. Don't be, Rachel said. She taught me that life isn't measured in years. It's measured in moments, in laughter, in paper birds folded on living room floors. She picked up one of the cranes Lucas had made. Your boys have time, Mr. Smith. Maybe not as much as you want, but they have right now. And right now, they're happy. Trevor's vision blurred. He looked at his sons sleeping peacefully, surrounded by hundreds of paper birds. When was the last time they'd looked this peaceful? The doctor said, I know what the doctor said, Rachel interrupted gently. I used to be one. Trevor's head snapped up. What? A nurse, pediatric hospice. I worked with children like yours for 15 years. Then why are you? Because medicine can only do so much, Rachel said. And sometimes what people need isn't another doctor. It's someone who sees them as more than a diagnosis. She looked at him. Your boys don't need more treatments, Mr. Smith. They need their father. They need to know that even if their bodies are giving up, their lives still matter. That they're not just dying, they're still living. Trevor couldn't speak. He sat down in the chair, his whole body shaking. I don't know how to do this, he whispered. I don't know how to let them go. Rachel knelt beside him. Then don't, not yet. Hold on as long as you can. But while you're holding on, let them see you smile. Let them hear you laugh. Let them know that loving them wasn't a tragedy. It was the greatest gift of your life. Trevor buried his face in his hands. The sobs came hard and quiet. Rachel didn't try to comfort him. She just stayed there, present, steady. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red but clear. How many cranes did we make tonight? Rachel counted. 307. How many more? 693. Trevor looked at his sleeping sons, at the pile of paper birds, at this woman who'd appeared in his house 3 days ago and somehow knew exactly what his family needed. Then we keep folding, he said. Rachel smiled. Then we keep folding. She stood and began gathering the loose paper, organizing it into neat stacks for tomorrow. Trevor watched her work. There was something about her, something he couldn't explain, like she'd been sent. Rachel? She looked up. Thank you. She held his gaze for a long moment. Don't thank me yet. We still have 693 miracles to make. She left him alone with his sons and the paper birds. Trevor sat in the silence, listening to Lucas and Eric breathe. In and out, steady, alive. Outside, the night pressed against the windows, but inside, surrounded by paper and hope, something had shifted. The house didn't feel like a tomb anymore. It felt like a home where people were still fighting, and maybe, just maybe, still winning. Trevor woke up on the living room floor. Sunlight was coming through the windows. His neck hurt. His back hurt. But for the first time in weeks, he'd actually slept. The boys were still on the couch, tangled in blankets, still breathing, still here. 307 paper cranes covered the coffee table like a flock of birds that had landed during the night. Trevor sat up slowly, trying not to wake them, but Lucas's eyes fluttered open. Daddy? Right here, buddy. Lucas smiled, actually smiled. Can we fold more today? Trevor's chest tightened. Yeah, we can fold more. From the kitchen, he heard sounds, someone cooking. The smell of pancakes drifted into the room, real food, not the meal replacement shakes the boys had been living on. Trevor found Rachel at the stove, still in her uniform, flipping pancakes like she'd done it in this kitchen 1,000 times. You didn't have to do this, he said. Rachel glanced at him. The boys need to eat, real food, not just medicine. They can barely keep anything down. They will today, Rachel said with quiet certainty, and somehow Trevor believed her. His mother came downstairs, surprised to find everyone already awake. Patricia looked at the paper cranes covering the living room, then at Trevor's wrinkled suit, then at Rachel cooking breakfast. You stayed down here all night? Patricia asked him. We were folding. Patricia's eyes softened. The boys look different this morning. Trevor knew what she meant. There was color in their faces. Not much, but some. Like life was trying to find its way back in. At breakfast, Eric actually ate 3 bites of pancake. It didn't sound like much, but 3 bites was more than he'd eaten in days. Lucas drank half a glass of orange juice without being forced. Rachel sat with them, cutting their food into small pieces, talking to them about nothing important. What their favorite color was, what they wanted to be when they grew up. When they grew up, like it was still possible. Trevor watched from the doorway, his coffee growing cold in his hand. This woman, this stranger, was doing something he couldn't. She was making his sons believe in tomorrow. After breakfast, Patricia pulled him aside. Do you know anything about her? She asked quietly. She told me she was a pediatric nurse, lost her daughter. Patricia's face went pale. Oh, that poor woman. She didn't want my pity, Trevor said. She just wanted to help. Still, Patricia said, you should know who's in your house, especially with the boys so vulnerable. Trevor nodded. She was right. That afternoon, while Rachel folded cranes with Lucas and Eric in the living room, Trevor went to his office. He opened his laptop and typed her name into the search bar. Rachel Jackson, pediatric nurse. The results came up slowly. There she was. Rachel Marie Jackson, former pediatric hospice nurse at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital in Memphis, one of the best in the country. She'd worked there for 12 years. Then, 6 years ago, she just stopped. No explanation in any of the records, no forwarding hospital. She just disappeared from nursing entirely. Trevor kept searching. And then, he found it. A news article from 6 years ago. Small. Easy to miss. Local nurse loses daughter to leukemia after hospital misdiagnosis. Trevor's blood went cold. He read the whole thing. Rachel's daughter, Maya Jackson, age 10, complained of fatigue and bruising for 3 months. The hospital ran basic tests, said it was nothing serious. By the time they caught it, the leukemia was stage 4. She died 6 weeks after diagnosis. Medical malpractice suit settled for $3.2 million. Trevor sat back in his chair, his hands shaking. Rachel had walked the same hell he was walking now, except she'd walked it alone. While working as a nurse, taking care of other people's dying children, missing the signs in her own daughter because she trusted the doctors, because she was too busy saving everyone else, and now she was here, in his house, folding paper cranes with his dying sons. Why? Trevor closed the laptop, went back downstairs. In the living room, the pile of cranes had grown. Rachel was teaching Eric a new fold. Lucas was stringing finished cranes onto fishing line, making them into garlands. How many now? Trevor asked. Rachel looked up. 418. 582 to go, Lucas said proudly. Eric held up his crane. This one's for Mom. Trevor's throat closed. She would have loved it. Rachel's eyes met his across the room. She knew. Somehow she knew he'd looked her up. But she didn't say anything, just kept folding. And Trevor realized something. She wasn't here by accident. She'd come here on purpose. To finish something she couldn't finish 6 years ago. Day 4. Trevor woke up before sunrise. The boys were already awake. He could hear their voices from downstairs, quiet, but awake. When he came down, they were already folding. Rachel sat between them, her hair still damp from a shower, teaching them a new technique. "You're up early," Trevor said. Lucas looked up. "We want to finish before—" He stopped. Didn't finish the sentence. "Before the week runs out." Nobody said it. But everyone knew. They folded through breakfast, through lunch. The pile grew and grew. Rachel strung them up on fishing line, hanging them from the ceiling like curtains. The living room started to look like something out of a dream. Hundreds of paper birds floating overhead, turning slowly in the air. Eric reached for another piece of paper and stopped. His hand was shaking. "You okay, buddy?" Trevor asked. Eric nodded, but his face was pale, sweating. Rachel put her hand on his forehead. "You're warm." "I'm fine," Eric said, but his voice was weak. Trevor's heart started racing. "How warm?" Rachel didn't answer. She just looked at him, and he knew. The home nurse, Carla, came by an hour later for the daily check. She took Eric's temperature, checked his blood pressure, listened to his heart. "His fever's up," she said quietly. 101.3. Trevor felt the room tilt. "What does that mean?" Carla hesitated. "Could be nothing. Could be an infection. With his immune system this weak," she didn't finish. "Should we take him to the hospital?" Patricia asked. "No," Eric said suddenly. His voice was small but firm. "I don't want to go back there." "Eric, please, Dad." His eyes filled with tears. "I just want to stay home. I want to fold." Trevor looked at Rachel. She was watching Eric with an expression he couldn't read. "It's his choice," Rachel said softly. "He's 7 years old." "He knows what he wants," Rachel said. "And what he doesn't want is to die in a hospital bed surrounded by machines." The words hit Trevor like a fist. Carla packed up her things. "I'll come back tonight. If his fever goes higher, you call me, understand?" Trevor nodded. After she left, Eric lay down on the couch. Lucas curled up beside him, holding his brother's hand. "We're not done yet," Lucas whispered. "We still have more to make." "I know," Eric said. "I'm just resting." Rachel covered them with a blanket. Then she kept folding, one crane after another, placing each one gently on the coffee table. Trevor sat across from her, his hands useless in his lap. "What if he doesn't make it?" Trevor whispered. Rachel's hands didn't stop moving. "Then he'll go surrounded by something beautiful, something he made, something that reminded him life is more than sickness." "That's not enough." "Maybe not," Rachel said, "but it's more than most people get." Trevor watched her fold, precise, steady, like she was praying with her hands. "Why are you really here?" he asked. Rachel looked up. "I told you I lost my daughter." "You could help any family. Why mine?" Rachel set down the crane she was working on. "Because when Maya was dying, I wasn't there. I was at work, taking care of other people's children while mine was alone in a hospital bed." Her voice cracked. "She died believing I chose them over her." "Rachel, I can't bring her back," Rachel said, "but maybe I can make sure your boys don't die feeling invisible, that they spend their last days knowing they matter, that someone sees them." Trevor's vision blurred. They sat in silence. The only sound was paper folding and the boys breathing on the couch. Hours passed, the sun moved across the sky, and then, just before dinner, Eric stirred. "I'm hungry," he said. Patricia nearly dropped the dish she was holding. "What?" "I'm hungry," Eric repeated. Trevor knelt beside the couch, touched his forehead. Still warm, but not worse. Rachel brought him soup. Eric ate 4 spoonfuls, then 6. Then he asked for more. Lucas sat up, grinning. "You're eating." "I know," Eric said, like it was the most normal thing in the world. Carla came back that evening, took his temperature again, 100.1. She stared at the thermometer, took it again, still 100.1. "It went down," she said slowly. That's not—" Trevor's hands were shaking. "What does that mean?" "I don't know," Carla admitted. "But this is good. This is really good." After she left, Trevor found Rachel standing by the window, looking out at the dark yard. "You knew," he said. Rachel didn't turn around. "No, I hoped." "What's the difference?" She finally looked at him. "Hope costs everything, and it doesn't promise anything back. But it's the only thing that keeps us human when everything else fails." Trevor stood beside her. Outside, the trees swayed in the wind. Inside, his sons were alive, folding, fighting. "How many cranes now?" he asked. 612. 388 to go. Rachel nodded. 388 to go. They stood there together, watching the night, and somewhere in that house full of paper birds and fragile hope, something impossible was happening. Life was pushing back against death. And for the first time, Trevor thought maybe, just maybe, life was winning. That night, Trevor couldn't sleep. He sat in his study with the lights off, staring at nothing. Eric's fever had dropped. The boys were eating again, laughing again. Everything pointed toward something good happening. So why did he feel like he was standing on the edge of a cliff? Downstairs, he heard movement, footsteps, soft, careful. Trevor got up and found Rachel in the living room, alone, folding cranes in the dark, only the moonlight coming through the windows. She didn't hear him at first, or maybe she did and didn't stop. Her hands moved slowly, deliberately, and Trevor realized she was whispering something, words he couldn't make out. He stepped closer. The floor creaked. Rachel looked up. Her face was wet. She'd been crying. "I didn't mean to interrupt," Trevor said. Rachel wiped her eyes quickly. "You're not. I just couldn't sleep." Trevor sat down across from her. "What were you saying just now, when you were folding?" Rachel looked down at the crane in her hands. "I was talking to my daughter." The words hung in the air between them. "Does it help?" Trevor asked quietly. "No," Rachel said, "but I do it anyway." She finished the crane and set it down with the others. There were dozens scattered around her. She'd been out here for hours. "I looked you up," Trevor admitted. "I know about the lawsuit, about what happened to Maya." Rachel didn't react, just reached for another piece of paper. "They missed it for 3 months," she said. Her voice was flat, empty. "I kept telling them something was wrong, that she was too tired, bruising too easily. But they said it was normal, growing pains, puberty starting early." She folded the paper with sharp, precise movements. "And I believed them, because I was a nurse, because I trusted doctors, because I was too busy taking care of everyone else's dying children to see my own daughter was dying right in front of me." "That wasn't your fault, wasn't it?" Rachel looked up. Her eyes were red but dry now. "I had the training. I knew the signs. But I didn't see them. I didn't push hard enough. I didn't fight for her the way I should have. You didn't know." "I should have." Her voice broke. "That's what mothers do. They know. And I didn't. I failed her." Trevor felt something crack open in his chest. "Is that why you're here? To make up for it?" Rachel was quiet for a long time. "I'm here because I can't save Maya," she finally said. "But maybe I can help your boys have what she didn't. Time, joy, a father who's present, a family that fights together instead of falling apart." She looked at him. "You still have a chance, Trevor. Don't waste it being afraid." "I'm terrified," Trevor whispered. "Good," Rachel said. "That means you still love them. That means you're still here." They sat in silence, just the sound of paper folding and the house settling around them. "Can I ask you something?" Trevor said. Rachel nodded. "Do you really think the cranes will work? That if we get to 1,000, they'll survive?" Rachel set down the paper. "I think your boys needed something to believe in, something bigger than cancer, bigger than statistics. And whether it's magic or medicine or God, I don't know. But I know they're fighting now. And that's worth more than any miracle." "But you don't think they'll make it?" Rachel met his eyes. "I think hope doesn't require a guarantee. It just requires us to show up every single day and keep folding." Trevor looked around the room, hundreds of paper birds hanging from the ceiling, covering tables, filling boxes, each one a small prayer, a small act of defiance against death. "How many now?" he asked. 703. 297 to go." Rachel picked up another piece of paper. 297 to go. Trevor reached for paper too, and they folded together in the dark, not speaking, just creating, just hoping. Upstairs, Lucas woke up. He looked over at Eric's bed. His brother was sleeping, breathing steady, alive. Lucas got up and tiptoed downstairs. He found his father and Rachel sitting in the living room, folding by moonlight. "Can I help?" he whispered. Trevor's throat tightened. "Come here, buddy." Lucas climbed into his father's lap. Trevor handed him a piece of paper, and the three of them folded in silence, a family stitched together by paper and hope and the refusal to surrender. Outside, the night stretched on, but inside, surrounded by birds that would never fly but somehow still carried prayers, something was taking root. Not certainty, not promises, just the quiet, stubborn belief that tomorrow might still come, and that maybe, just maybe, love was enough to make it worth fighting for. Day 5. Trevor woke up to the sound of his sons arguing. Actually arguing. "That one's mine," Lucas said. "No, I made the blue ones. You made the red ones." "You're wrong." Trevor sat up on the couch where he'd fallen asleep again. The boys were at the coffee table, sorting through cranes. Their faces had color, real color, not the gray pale they'd been for months. Rachel stood in the kitchen doorway, watching them with a small smile. "They've been at it for 10 minutes, she said quietly. "They're fighting," Trevor said. "They're alive," Rachel corrected, and Trevor realized she was right. Fighting meant caring, meant energy, meant their bodies had enough strength left to argue about paper birds. Patricia came downstairs and stopped in her tracks. "Eric's out of bed." "I know," Trevor said. His voice sounded strange even to himself. Carla arrived for the morning check. She took vitals on both boys, checked their charts, took blood samples to send to the lab. She didn't say anything at first, just kept rechecking the numbers. "What?" Trevor asked. His heart was pounding. Carla looked up. "Their oxygen levels are higher. Heart rates are stronger. Eric's white blood cell count is—" She trailed off. "I need to run this again." "Is that bad?" Lucas asked. "No, sweetheart," Carla said. "It's good. It's really good." She left with the blood samples, promising to call as soon as the lab confirmed the results. After she was gone, the house felt different, lighter somehow. Rachel made lunch. The boys ate. Actually ate. Eric finished a whole sandwich. Lucas drank an entire glass of milk. Trevor watched from the doorway, unable to move, unable to process what he was seeing. His sons were getting better. It shouldn't be possible. The doctors had been clear. Stage 4, leukemia. Bodies shutting down. 1 week. But here they were, 5 days later, eating, laughing, living. That afternoon, Trevor found Rachel outside on the back patio. She was standing at the railing, looking out at the yard where snow was starting to melt. "The doctor called," Trevor said. "Blood work came back. The leukemic cells are decreasing." Rachel didn't turn around. "I heard." "Rachel, they're getting better." "I know." "How?" Trevor moved beside her. "How's this possible?" Rachel was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know if it is," she finally said. "This could be temporary. A rally before the end. It happens sometimes. The body gathers strength one last time before—" "Don't," Trevor said. "Don't say that." "I have to," Rachel said, "because hope without truth is just cruelty. Your boys are doing better today, but tomorrow could be different, next week could be different, and if you let yourself believe this is over, if you stop being present because you think they're saved, you'll miss whatever time you actually have." Trevor felt anger rise in his chest. "So what? We just keep pretending they're dying even when they're clearly improving." "No," Rachel said. "You keep loving them like every day matters, because it does. Whether they have a week or a year or 50 years, every single day matters." Trevor leaned against the railing. His hands were shaking. "I don't know how to do this," he whispered. "I don't know how to hope and grieve at the same time." Rachel finally looked at him. "You do it by folding, Trevor, one crane at a time. You do it by sitting on the floor with your sons, by laughing when they laugh, by being their father instead of their savior." "I want to save them." "I know," Rachel said softly, "but maybe that's not your job. Maybe your job is just to love them, and let God handle the rest." The word hung between them. God. Trevor hadn't thought about God in months, not since his wife died, not since the diagnosis. He'd been too angry, too betrayed. "I don't know if I believe anymore," he admitted. Rachel looked back at the yard. "Belief isn't a feeling, Trevor. It's a choice. Every morning you choose to get up, to fold, to stay present, to love anyway. She paused. That's faith, not certainty, not proof, just the choice to keep going even when you don't know how it ends. Trevor felt something break inside him, not painfully, more like ice cracking in spring. You did this, he said. Whatever's happening, you did this. Rachel shook her head. I folded paper. Your boys did the rest. It's more than paper. Maybe, Rachel said, or maybe it's exactly what it looks like. A father and his sons making something beautiful while they still can. Inside, Lucas called out. Dad, we finished another 20. Trevor looked through the window. His sons at the table, folding, smiling, alive. He turned back to Rachel. How many now? 816. 184 to go, Rachel nodded. We're close. Trevor took a breath. What happens when we reach 1,000? Rachel met his eyes. I don't know, but we'll find out together. They went back inside, back to the boys, back to the folding, and Trevor realized something that shook him. He wasn't folding to save his sons anymore. He was folding because this, right here, right now, was life. And whether they had days or decades, this moment was enough. Day 6. The house felt different that morning, something in the air, something Trevor couldn't name. The boys woke up excited. They wanted to finish, to get to 1,000. How many left? Eric asked at breakfast. Rachel counted the cranes hanging from the ceiling. 134, Lucas grinned. We can do that today. We can try, Rachel said, but her voice was careful, measured. Trevor noticed. What's wrong? Nothing, Rachel said, but she was watching Eric closely. They folded through the morning. The pile grew. 120 cranes left, then 100, then 90. Eric was sweating. Trevor saw it first, beads forming on his forehead, his hands shaking slightly as he folded. Eric, you okay, buddy? I'm fine, Eric said, but his voice was thin. Rachel put down her crane. Eric, look at me. He looked up. His eyes were glassy, unfocused. I'm just tired, he said, and then he slumped forward. Trevor caught him before he hit the table. Eric! His son's body was burning, fever radiating through his clothes. Call Carla, Rachel said. Her voice was calm, but her hands were already moving, laying Eric down on the couch, checking his pulse. Patricia grabbed the phone. Lucas started crying. What's wrong with him? He's okay, Rachel said. He's okay, sweetheart. But Trevor saw her face. She was scared. Carla arrived in 12 minutes. She took Eric's temperature, 104.2. She checked his blood pressure, his heart rate, his oxygen. We need to get him to the hospital, she said, now. No. The word came from Eric, barely a whisper, but firm. His eyes opened, fever bright and desperate. I don't want to go back there. Eric, you're really sick. Please, Dad. Tears ran down his flushed cheeks. We're so close. We only have 90 left. Trevor's world was collapsing. The cranes don't matter right now. They do, Eric whispered. They do matter. Carla looked at Trevor. Mr. Smith, his fever is dangerously high. If we don't... I know, Trevor said. His voice broke. I know. He looked at Rachel. She was kneeling beside Eric, holding his hand. What do I do? Trevor asked her. Rachel looked up. I can't make this choice for you. Tell me what to do. Trevor. Her voice was gentle but firm. This is your son. Your choice. Trevor looked at Eric, his baby boy, burning with fever, possibly dying. If they went to the hospital, maybe the doctors could bring the fever down. Maybe they could buy more time. Or maybe Eric would die there, alone, in a sterile room, surrounded by machines instead of family. It's his life, Rachel said softly. Maybe he should have a say in how he lives it. Trevor knelt beside the couch, took Eric's burning hand in his. If we stay home, he couldn't finish. I know, Eric whispered, but I want to finish, Daddy. I want to make our wish. Lucas was beside them now. I'll help him. We'll fold together. Trevor looked at Carla, at his mother, at Rachel. Everyone thinks I'm insane, he said. Yes, Carla said honestly, but he's your son. Trevor closed his eyes, felt Eric's hand in his, thought about his wife, about God, about everything he'd lost and everything he was about to lose. And then he made the choice. "We're staying home." Carla stood up. "Mr. Smith, I have to advise." "I know," Trevor said. "We're staying." She packed her bag slowly. "I'll come back tonight. If his fever spikes any higher, you call 911. You understand?" Trevor nodded. After she left, the house was quiet except for Eric's labored breathing. Rachel went to work. Cool cloths on his forehead, water to keep him hydrated, medicine to bring down the fever. She moved with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before, who knew what dying looked like, who knew how to make it gentler. "What can I do?" Trevor asked. Rachel looked at him. "Fold." "What?" "Eric wants to finish, so we finish. We fold the last 90 cranes and we put them where he can see them." Trevor couldn't believe what he was hearing. "He's dying and you want to fold paper?" "He's living," Rachel corrected, "and he wants to see something beautiful before he goes. So yes, we fold." Trevor wanted to scream, to throw something, to rage at the universe for being so cruel. But instead, he picked up a piece of paper. And he folded. Lucas folded beside him. Patricia folded. Even through her tears, she folded. And Rachel stayed with Eric, keeping him cool, keeping him comfortable, whispering things Trevor couldn't hear. The afternoon stretched like torture. Eric drifted in and out, sometimes conscious, sometimes not. But every time he woke up, Rachel showed him a new crane, placed it on his chest, told him how many were left. 85, she'd say. "You're almost there." And Eric would smile. Barely. But smile. The sun moved across the sky. 70 cranes left, then 60, then 50. Eric's fever held at 104, didn't rise, but didn't fall. Trevor prayed. Actually prayed. For the first time in 2 years. "Please, please don't take him. Not like this. Not now." Evening came. Carla returned, took Eric's temperature again, 103.8. She blinked. Took it again. 103.8. "It dropped," she whispered. "Just a little, but it dropped." Trevor's hands shook so badly he couldn't hold the paper anymore. Eric opened his eyes. "How many left?" Rachel counted. 27. Eric tried to sit up. "Can you help me?" "Eric, you need to rest. Please," he said. "I want to fold." Rachel looked at Trevor. He nodded. She helped Eric sit up, propped pillows behind him, put a piece of paper in his hands. His fingers could barely hold it. Trevor saw it first. Beads forming on his forehead, his hands shaking slightly as he folded. "Eric? You okay, buddy?" "I'm fine," Eric said, but his voice was thin. Rachel put down her crane. "Eric, look at me." He looked up. His eyes were glassy, unfocused. "I'm just tired," he said, and then he slumped forward. Trevor caught him before he hit the table. "Eric!" His son's body was burning, fever radiating through his clothes. "Call Carla," Rachel said. Her voice was calm, but her hands were already moving, laying Eric down on the couch, checking his pulse. Patricia grabbed the phone. Lucas started crying. "What's wrong with him?" "He's okay," Rachel said. "He's okay, sweetheart." But Trevor saw her face. She was scared. Carla arrived in 12 minutes. She took Eric's temperature, 104.2. She checked his blood pressure, his heart rate, his oxygen. "We need to get him to the hospital," she said, "now." "No." The word came from Eric, barely a whisper, but firm. His eyes opened, fever bright and desperate. "I don't want to go back there." "Eric, you're really sick." "Please, Dad." Tears ran down his flushed cheeks. "We're so close. We only have 90 left." Trevor's world was collapsing. "The cranes don't matter right now." "They do," Eric whispered. "They do matter." Carla looked at Trevor. "Mr. Smith, his fever is dangerously high. If we don't—" "I know," Trevor said. His voice broke. "I know." He looked at Rachel. She was kneeling beside Eric, holding his hand. "What do I do?" Trevor asked her. Rachel looked up. "I can't make this choice for you." "Tell me what to do." "Trevor." Her voice was gentle but firm. "This is your son. Your choice." Trevor looked at Eric, his baby boy, burning with fever, possibly dying. If they went to the hospital, maybe the doctors could bring the fever down. Maybe they could buy more time. Or maybe Eric would die there, alone, in a sterile room, surrounded by machines instead of family. It's his life, Rachel said softly. Maybe he should have a say in how he lives it. Trevor knelt beside the couch, took Eric's burning hand in his. If we stay home, he couldn't finish. I know, Eric whispered, but I want to finish, Daddy. I want to make our wish. Lucas was beside them now. I'll help him. We'll fold together. Trevor looked at Carla, at his mother, at Rachel. Everyone thinks I'm insane, he said. Yes, Carla said honestly, but he's your son. Trevor closed his eyes, felt Eric's hand in his, thought about his wife, about God, about everything he'd lost and everything he was about to lose. And then he made the choice. We're staying home, Carla stood up. Mr. Smith, I have to advise. I know, Trevor said. We're staying. She packed her bag slowly. I'll come back tonight. If his fever spikes any higher, you call 911. You understand? Trevor nodded. After she left, the house was quiet except for Eric's labored breathing. Rachel went to work. Cool cloths on his forehead, water to keep him hydrated, medicine to bring down the fever. She moved with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before, who knew what dying looked like, who knew how to make it gentler. What can I do? Trevor asked. Rachel looked at him. Fold. What? Eric wants to finish, so we finish. We fold the last 90 cranes and we put them where he can see them. Trevor couldn't believe what he was hearing. He's dying and you want to fold paper? He's living, Rachel corrected, and he wants to see something beautiful before he goes. So yes, we fold. Trevor wanted to scream, to throw something, to rage at the universe for being so cruel. But instead, he picked up a piece of paper, and he folded. Lucas folded beside him. Patricia folded. Even through her tears, she folded. And Rachel stayed with Eric, keeping him cool, keeping him comfortable, whispering things Trevor couldn't hear. The afternoon stretched like torture. Eric drifted in and out, sometimes conscious, sometimes not. But every time he woke up, Rachel showed him a new crane, placed it on his chest, told him how many were left. 85, she'd say. You're almost there. And Eric would smile. Barely. But smile. The sun moved across the sky. 70 cranes left, then 60, then 50. Eric's fever held at 104, didn't rise, but didn't fall. Trevor prayed. Actually prayed. For the first time in 2 years. Please, please don't take him. Not like this. Not now. Evening came. Carla returned, took Eric's temperature again, 103.8. She blinked. Took it again. 103.8. It dropped, she whispered. Just a little, but it dropped. Trevor's hands shook so badly he couldn't hold the paper anymore. Eric opened his eyes. How many left? Rachel counted. 27. Eric tried to sit up. Can you help me? Eric, you need to rest. Please, he said. I want to fold. Rachel looked at Trevor. He nodded. She helped Eric sit up, propped pillows behind him, put a piece of paper in his hands. His fingers could barely hold it. But he folded. Slowly, shakily. And he finished one more crane. 26, Eric whispered. Lucas hugged his brother carefully. We're going to make it. I know, Eric said, and then he fell asleep. Right there, mid-fold. But his fever was 103.2. Still dangerous, still high, but dropping. Trevor sat on the floor, surrounded by paper birds, and wept. Not quietly, not carefully. He sobbed like a man who'd just watched his son choose how to die. And maybe, just maybe, choose to live instead. Trevor didn't leave Eric's side that night. He sat in the chair beside the couch, watching his son breathe, in and out, each breath a small miracle. Rachel stayed too. She'd pulled another chair close, a cool cloth in her hands, ready to change it when Eric's fever spiked again. But it didn't spike. By midnight, it was 102.1. By 2 in the morning, 101.4. Patricia had taken Lucas upstairs to sleep. The house was quiet except for the soft tick of the clock and Eric's steady breathing. You should rest, Rachel said softly. Trevor shook his head. I can't. He's stable now. I know, Trevor's voice was raw. But if I close my eyes, I'm afraid I'll wake up and he'll be gone. Rachel didn't argue. She just sat with him in the dark. Hours passed. Finally, Trevor spoke. I almost lost him today. No, Rachel said. Today you let him choose. There's a difference. He's 7 years old. He doesn't understand. He understands more than you think, Rachel interrupted gently. He understands that life isn't just about breathing, it's about meaning, about finishing what you start, about making something matter. Trevor looked at her. You would have let your daughter choose too, wouldn't you? Rachel's face changed. Something old and painful surfaced. I didn't get the chance, she said quietly. By the time I knew she was sick, she was too far gone, too weak to have a choice. She died in a hospital bed asking me why I wasn't there when she needed me. Rachel, she was right, Rachel continued. I wasn't there. I was working, saving other people's children, and mine died thinking I didn't love her enough to notice she was sick. Her voice cracked. She looked down at her hands. That's why I'm here, Trevor, not to save your boys. I can't do that, but I can make sure they know every single moment that they're seen, that they matter, that their father chose them over fear. Trevor felt something break open in his chest. Not pain, something deeper, something like understanding. She knew you loved her, he said. Rachel shook her head. I hope so, but I'll never know for sure, and that's something I'll carry forever. They sat in silence. Outside, the wind picked up. Snow started falling again, soft and quiet against the windows. Trevor looked at Eric. His son's face was peaceful now, the fever flush fading, his breathing easier. Thank you, Trevor whispered, for teaching me how to be present. Rachel met his eyes. You're doing that yourself? No, I wasn't. Before you came, I was trying to fix everything, control everything, buy my way out of grief. He paused. But you showed me that sometimes the answer isn't doing more. It's just being there. Rachel smiled sadly. That's all any of us can do. Show up, stay, love them while we can. Around 4 a.m, Eric stirred. His eyes opened, clear, focused. Dad? Trevor was beside him instantly. Right here, buddy. I'm thirsty. Rachel brought water. Eric drank slowly, half the glass. How do you feel? Trevor asked. Eric thought about it. Tired, but okay. Trevor's throat tightened. You scared me today. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Just don't leave me, okay? Eric reached for his father's hand. Okay. Trevor held on like his son was the only real thing in the world. Rachel checked Eric's temperature one more time. 99.8, almost normal. She looked at Trevor. Their eyes met. And for the first time in days, Trevor saw something in her face that looked like hope. 26 more, Eric whispered. Then we make our wish. 26 more, Trevor repeated. Eric closed his eyes again. But this time, Trevor wasn't afraid. This wasn't the sleep of fever. It was rest. Real rest. As dawn broke through the windows, painting the room in soft gray light, Trevor finally let himself breathe. His son was still here, still fighting, still folding. Rachel stood and stretched. I'll make coffee. Rachel, she turned. Your daughter knew, Trevor said. She knew you loved her. I promise you, she knew. Rachel's eyes filled. She nodded once, then left the room before he could see her cry. Trevor sat alone with his sleeping son and the paper cranes hanging overhead like 1,000 small prayers. He thought about his wife, about God, about miracles that don't look like miracles until you're standing in the middle of them. And he realized something. Maybe healing wasn't about the body getting better. Maybe it was about the heart remembering how to hope. Maybe it was about a father learning to be present instead of powerful. Maybe it was about paper birds and quiet women and choices that feel impossible but turn out to be exactly right. Outside, the sun rose. A new day. Day 7. The last day the doctors had given them. But Eric was still breathing, and they only had 26 cranes left to fold. Trevor picked up a piece of paper, and he started to fold. Not because he believed in magic, but because he believed in this, right here, right now. His son, this moment, this love that refused to surrender. And maybe that was miracle enough. Morning came soft and quiet. Eric woke up asking for breakfast. Real breakfast. Eggs, toast, orange juice. Patricia nearly dropped the pan when she heard him. "What did you say, sweetheart?" "I'm hungry," Eric repeated, like it was the most normal thing in the world. Trevor couldn't move, couldn't breathe. He just watched his son sit up on the couch, eyes clear, color in his cheeks. Rachel checked his temperature. 98.6, normal, completely normal. "How do you feel?" she asked. Eric stretched. "Good. Tired, but good." He looked around at all the paper cranes. "Can we finish today?" Lucas came running down the stairs. "You're awake?" "Yeah," Eric grinned, "and we have 26 more to go." The boys ate breakfast together. Actually ate, not picking, not forcing, just eating like children should. Trevor stood in the doorway watching them, tears running down his face. Rachel touched his arm gently. "Breathe, Trevor. I don't understand what's happening." "Maybe you're not supposed to," she said. "Maybe you're just supposed to be grateful." After breakfast, they gathered in the living room, the four of them. Trevor, Rachel, Lucas, and Eric. 26 pieces of paper laid out on the table. "We do these together," Rachel said. "All of us, every single one." They folded slowly, carefully, each crane a prayer, each fold a thank you. 26 became 20, 20 became 15. Carla arrived for the morning check. She stopped in the doorway, staring. "He's up," she said. Not a question, a statement of disbelief. "He's up," Trevor confirmed. She examined Eric, listened to his heart, checked his vitals, drew blood for the lab. "I don't understand," she kept saying. "I just don't understand." But Eric just smiled. "We're almost done. Only 12 more." Carla left shaking her head, promising to call with the lab results. They kept folding. 12 became 10, 10 became 5. And then there was one piece of paper left. Gold, metallic, shimmering in the afternoon light. Rachel had saved it, kept it hidden until this moment. "This one," she said. "We fold together." Trevor, Rachel, Lucas, and Eric gathered around the table. They each placed one hand on the paper. "What do we wish for?" Lucas asked quietly. Trevor looked at his sons, alive, here, fighting. "We wish for more time," he said, his voice breaking. "Just more time together." "And we wish to always remember," Rachel added softly, "that love is stronger than fear." Eric nodded. "And that we're a family." "Always," Lucas whispered. 4 hands worked together, each fold deliberate, sacred. The crane took shape slowly. Valley fold, mountain fold, wings spreading, and when it was finished, they held it up together. The 1,000th crane. Gold and perfect and impossible. Sunlight streamed through the windows, catching the metallic paper, casting tiny rainbows across the walls. The room fell silent, and in that silence, something shifted. Not visibly, not loudly, but Trevor felt it. A presence, warm, familiar. For just a moment, he swore he smelled jasmine, his wife's perfume. He looked at Rachel. Her eyes were wide. She felt it too. "Mom's here," Lucas whispered. Eric nodded. "I know." They stood there, holding the golden crane, surrounded by 999 others hanging like a waterfall of color and hope. The phone rang. Carla's voice was shaking. "Mr. Smith, the lab results are back. I need you to sit down." Trevor's heart stopped. "What is it?" "Their white blood cell counts are rising. The leukemic cells are decreasing. Significantly." She paused. "I don't have an explanation, but Eric's body is responding. Both boys are responding." Trevor couldn't speak. The room spun. "What does that mean?" he finally managed. Carla's voice cracked. "It means they're fighting back. It means there's hope." Trevor dropped the phone, fell to his knees. Lucas and Eric wrapped their arms around him. Rachel knelt beside them, her hand on Trevor's shoulder. They stayed there on the floor, holding each other, while 1,000 paper cranes turned slowly overhead. "We did it," Eric whispered. "We made our wish." Trevor pulled his sons closer. You did it. You both did it. Rachel stood quietly, began gathering her things. Trevor looked up. What are you doing? My work here is done, she said softly. No, Rachel, you can't. She smiled, sad but peaceful. Your boys are going to live, Trevor. They're going to fight. They're going to win. And you're going to be the father they need. Not because of me. Because you remembered how. Stay, Trevor pleaded. Please, stay with us. Rachel knelt down one more time, looked at Lucas and Eric. You two taught me something, she said. You taught me that my daughter's story doesn't end with her death. It continues every time someone else chooses hope, every time a family folds together instead of falling apart. She touched their faces gently. Thank you for letting me finish what Maya started. She stood, walked toward the door. Rachel, Trevor called. She turned. Your daughter knew, he said. She knew you loved her, and she's proud of what you did here. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. She nodded. Then she was gone. The door closed softly, and Trevor sat on the floor with his sons, surrounded by paper birds and impossible hope, and let himself believe again in miracles, in healing, in love that folds us back together when we're broken. Outside, Rachel drove away in her old car, but she left behind something that would never leave. 1,000 cranes, 2 boys learning to live again, and a father who finally understood that presence was the greatest gift he could ever give. 6 months later, the living room still held the cranes, all 1,000 of them. Trevor refused to take them down. They hung from the ceiling like a cathedral of paper and hope, turning slowly whenever someone walked through, catching the light, casting shadows that looked like wings. But the medical equipment was gone. The oxygen tanks, the IV poles, the hospital bed. Instead, there were soccer cleats by the door, backpacks on the couch, drawings taped to the refrigerator. Life, real, messy, beautiful life. Lucas and Eric were in remission. The experimental trial Rachel had funded worked, 3 rounds of treatment. Their bodies, somehow strengthened by those impossible weeks of folding, held on, fought back, won. Dr. Patel called it unprecedented, wrote papers about psychological factors in pediatric cancer outcomes, used words like miraculous and unexplained. But Trevor knew the truth. It wasn't the medicine alone that saved his sons. It was a woman in a blue uniform who taught them that hope was a choice, that life was worth fighting for, that presence mattered more than promises. Trevor had tried to find her, called every number, searched every database, but Rachel Jackson had disappeared the same way she'd arrived, quietly, without trace. All she left behind was a photograph, the one she'd given him that last night, a young girl folding a paper crane. Maya, smiling. Trevor had it framed, put it on the mantel beside his wife's photo. 2 angels who'd loved his family from different sides of heaven. He'd changed too. The billion-dollar company no longer consumed him. He'd stepped back, hired people he trusted, made space for what mattered. Now, every Wednesday, he and the boys volunteered at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. In the same ward where they'd received their death sentence, they taught other sick kids to fold cranes, brought colored paper and fishing line and stories about a woman who believed in miracles made of hope and patience. Some of the kids were too weak to fold, so Trevor and his sons would sit beside their beds and fold for them, place each finished crane where they could see it, remind them they weren't alone. He'd started a foundation, Maya's Wings, named after the daughter of a woman whose name he didn't even know how to pronounce without his voice breaking. The foundation funded experimental trials, paid medical bills for families drowning in debt, provided hospice care that focused on living, not just dying. In 6 months, they'd helped 53 families, 53 children who might not have had a chance, and every single one of them received a box of colored paper and instructions on how to fold a crane. Today was a special day, Lucas and Eric's 8th birthday. The birthday the doctors said they'd never reach. The house was full. Friends, family, other kids from the hospital. Patricia had baked a cake, decorated with paper cranes made of frosting. The boys blew out the candles together. "What did you wish for?" someone asked. Lucas and Eric looked at each other, then at their father. "We don't need to wish anymore," Eric said. "Why not?" "Because we're already living our wish," Lucas finished. Trevor's throat closed. He pulled his sons close, kissed the tops of their heads, hair that had grown back, thick and wild and beautiful. Later, after the guests left and the boys were asleep upstairs in their own beds, not hospital beds, just regular beds with dinosaur sheets and too many pillows. Trevor sat alone in the living room. He picked up a piece of paper. Yellow. Maya's favorite color, Rachel had once told him, and he started to fold. He didn't need to anymore. Didn't need to bargain with God or make wishes or pray for miracles, but he folded anyway, because Rachel had taught him something that went deeper than healing. She taught him that life wasn't about the destination. It was about the moments in between, the paper folded on living room floors, the laughter shared over crooked birds, the presents given when nothing else could be. She taught him that sometimes God doesn't answer prayers the way we expect. Sometimes he sends a stranger with gentle hands and a broken heart who knows exactly what we need. Sometimes he heals us not by taking away the pain, but by sitting with us in it, teaching us that beauty can still be made, that hope can still exist, that love doesn't require guarantees, just the courage to show up. Trevor finished the crane, set it beside the others. The phone rang, a restricted number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Hello?" Silence. Then a voice he'd recognize anywhere. "Mr. Smith." "Rachel." His heart nearly stopped. "Where are you?" "That doesn't matter," she said softly. "I just wanted to know, are they okay?" Trevor looked at the ceiling, at the 1,000 cranes his sons had folded when they should have been dying. "They're perfect," he whispered. "They're alive and healthy and perfect." He heard her breath catch. "Good, that's good. Rachel, please, come back. Let us thank you properly. Let the boys see you. They ask about you every day." "I can't," she said. "This was never about me." "It was always about you," Trevor said. "You saved them." "No." Her voice was firm but gentle. "I just reminded you what was already there. Love, hope, faith. You saved them, Trevor, by choosing to be present, by sitting on the floor, by folding." Trevor felt tears on his face. "I miss you." "I'm not gone," Rachel said. "I'm in every crane, every moment you choose hope over fear, every time you sit with your sons instead of trying to fix everything." She paused. "That's how you honor what we did together. You live, fully, presently, gratefully." "Rachel, I have to go, but Trevor, thank you for letting me finish what Maya started, for giving me a reason to believe that love doesn't end. It just changes forms." "Wait," but the line went dead. Trevor sat holding the phone, staring at the cranes overhead. And he understood. Rachel wasn't coming back. She'd never planned to. She was a gift, brief, precious, sent exactly when his family needed her most. And now she was gone, helping another family, teaching another father how to fold, how to hope, how to live. Trevor stood, went upstairs, looked in on his sleeping sons. Lucas was curled on his side, one hand tucked under his pillow. Eric was sprawled out, taking up most of the bed, mouth open, snoring softly. Alive. Breathing. "Here," Trevor whispered into the dark. "Thank you. For Rachel. For Maya. For teaching us that miracles don't always look like we expect. That sometimes healing starts with paper and ends with presence. That love, real, selfless, impossible love, can fold us back together when we're falling apart." He kissed each boy's forehead, turned off the light, and as he walked downstairs past the 1,000 paper cranes that still hung like prayers in his living room, Trevor smiled, because he finally understood what Rachel had been trying to teach him all along. Life wasn't about avoiding death. It was about choosing every single day to live, to be present, to love deeply, to fold beauty from brokenness, to believe, even when it feels impossible, that tomorrow is worth fighting for. And sometimes, when you fold enough cranes with enough hope, miracles happen, not because the paper is magic, but because love is.
He only came back to grab a folder, that's all. A quick stop between flights, in and out, like always. But the second Jack Edward opened the door, he stopped breathing. There in the living room, his sons, Finn and Liam, were curled into the lap of the maid, eyes closed, smiles soft, cheeks pressed to hers like they'd always belonged there. No cameras had prepared him for this, no staff reports, no quiet updates from the housekeeper. What he saw broke him, not with rage, not with fear, but with the sudden ache of realizing he hadn't been here, not in the room, not in their lives, not in his own heart. And what was worse, they were finally okay, without him. Grief didn't just visit Jack, it gutted him. When Melissa died, something in him went dark, still walking, still breathing, but gone. He stopped listening, stopped showing up, stopped believing that anything tender could survive a world so cruel. So he did what men like Jack knew how to do. He worked, he left, he built distance between himself and the ache. Trips turned into escapes, meetings became his medicine. Every flight away from home was one more mile between him and the life he no longer knew how to hold. The house ran like a machine, quiet, clean, empty. He hired everyone money could find, but no one stayed. Not because they weren't skilled, but because you can't fix a soul with checklists. And then came Christine James. She wasn't loud, she wasn't trained in trauma. She just came when they called and stayed when they asked her not to leave. And somehow, God used her silence like a song. That day, when Jack walked in and saw his sons wrapped in her arms, their tiny hands clutching her shirt like it was the only safe place in the world, something cracked. Because for the first time in months, he saw peace. Not the kind you schedule, not the kind you earn, but the kind God places quietly in the hands of those who show up and stay. Jack didn't say a word. He couldn't. He just stood there, phone still in hand, world still spinning. And in that quiet, God whispered to his heart the one thing he'd stopped believing. This is still your home, but first, you have to come back. Before we begin this story, can I ask you something? When was the last time you stopped running? Stopped pretending you were okay? Stopped long enough to feel what you've buried? If you've ever walked through grief, if you've ever felt lost inside your own home, if you've ever wondered if God could still reach you after everything you've shut down, then this story is for you. Click subscribe, like this video, and tell us where in the world you're watching from. And as you watch, I pray something in this story reminds you, God doesn't need you to be perfect. He just wants you to come back, even if it's messy, even if it's broken, even if all you can do is stand in the doorway and cry. Let's begin. The wheels of the black sedan hadn't even cooled when Jack Edward stepped out, suit jacket still creased from the plane, eyes blank from the boardroom. It was supposed to be a 48-hour trip, but somewhere between Chicago and the silence he carried inside him, Jack had lost count. He didn't call ahead, didn't text the staff, didn't even tell the driver he was coming back. He just showed up, like a ghost re-entering his own home. The door opened with its usual hiss of automation. Same marble floor, same polished air, same emptiness. He didn't expect anything to be different, and maybe that was the problem. Jack walked through the entryway with the same half-scrolling thumb and dead-eyed focus he used in meetings, one step ahead of feeling, always one step removed from where he was. Until he heard it. A sound he hadn't heard in months, maybe longer. It wasn't music, not exactly. It was humming, low, gentle, untrained. The kind of sound a person makes when they think no one is listening. He turned the corner, half expecting a broken speaker or a forgotten TV, and then he saw them, his sons, Finn and Liam, one on each knee, tiny fingers tangled in her apron, their faces tucked into either side of Christine's neck. Smiling, smiling, not wild, not manic, not desperate for attention, just content, like they were right where they belonged. Christine didn't notice him. Her head was slightly bowed, humming a tune no one taught her, just something she must have made up. Her arms were wrapped around the boys, not tight, but firm, like she knew they'd fall apart if she let go too soon. Jack froze in the doorway, not in anger, not even in confusion, just stillness. The kind that comes when your soul recognizes something your brain hasn't caught up to yet. He didn't speak, didn't move. He simply watched. The boys breathed in sync with her chest, every rise and fall, every tiny sigh of safety, as if they'd found something sacred and decided to stay. Something inside Jack cracked, quietly, not like glass, more like ice melting around the edges. He hadn't seen them like this since Melissa died, maybe not even before that, and God help him, he wasn't sure if he felt relief or grief or shame. Maybe all three. He looked down, realized his hand was still clenched around his phone. An unread message from a venture partner blinked at him. He didn't open it. He just turned slowly, backed out of the room like someone who'd walked into a chapel mid-prayer. No one had seen him, but something had seen him. He felt it. Upstairs, the hallway stretched longer than usual. He passed Melissa's music room without looking in, past the empty nursery chair he never sat in. He entered his office, but didn't sit. Just stood in front of the tall window, looking out across the cold, perfect lawn. A man with everything, and nothing. The silence in the house had always been his sanctuary, his fortress, his deal with the grief. But now it felt like judgment. Like every square inch of marble echoed a question he'd been avoiding. Where were you? Where were you when the boys cried in the night? When they reached for someone who wouldn't disappear by morning? Where were you when love asked for presence, not performance? Jack closed his eyes, and for the first time in months he didn't hear numbers or deadlines. He heard her, Christine, humming, steady, unhurried. He didn't know what song it was. Maybe it wasn't one. Maybe it was just a sound she made to tell two little boys, "You're safe now." And somehow, in a way he couldn't explain, he knew it wasn't just for them. It was for him, too. She hadn't seen him in the doorway, hadn't heard the soft click of the front door behind him. But still, she held them, still humming, still here. And as Jack turned away, quietly, almost reverently, something inside him whispered what he didn't yet know how to say, "Don't leave." That night Jack stood over the sink long after the dishes had been cleared. He hadn't touched his dinner, didn't remember sitting down. The house had grown quiet again, but this silence wasn't clean anymore. It was thick, full of questions he wasn't ready to ask. Christine was somewhere down the hall, settling the boys for bed. She always moved quietly, like someone who knew the cost of peace and didn't want to waste it. Jack stared out the kitchen window. It was raining lightly, the kind of soft drizzle that barely kissed the glass but carried its own kind of ache. He didn't usually notice things like that, but tonight he did. Earlier, he had reviewed the security footage. He didn't know why. Maybe he needed proof that what he saw was real. Maybe he needed a reason to feel angry. He clicked through the hours he'd been away, expecting something. What he found was silence, not emptiness, but peace. Christine reading to the boys in the living room. No big voices, no overstimulated noise, just quiet rhythm. She didn't force them to sit. She didn't demand focus. She waited until one of them crawled closer on his own, and then the other followed. She turned the pages slowly. Even when they lost interest, she kept reading aloud, her voice steady, as if presence mattered more than performance. In another clip, Liam cried when Finn took his toy. Christine didn't correct, didn't scold. She bent down, eye level, and whispered something he couldn't hear. Liam stopped crying, not because he was told to, but because he was understood. Jack clicked out of the footage, closed the laptop, pushed it to the other end of the desk like it had said something he wasn't ready to hear. He couldn't stop thinking about one thing. What if all this time he'd been giving his children structure but not love? What if love looked different now? Messier, quieter, softer than he knew how to be. Later that evening, he knocked gently on the boy's door. It wasn't something he did. Christine opened it halfway. Her voice was low. "They're asleep." He nodded, unsure why he'd come. Her apron was folded over one arm, her shoes already off. Hair tied back loosely, a smudge of flour on her wrist. She didn't look like someone important. She looked like someone willing. That unsettled him more than he could say. "I watched the footage," he said. Christine didn't flinch. "I know," she replied, with a strange kind of peace. "You always do." He should have been offended. He wasn't. Jack looked at the floor, then back at her. "They're close to you." She nodded. "I know." "And you never crossed a line?" Her eyes met his, warm, clear, not defensive. "I didn't draw any," she said. "I just stayed when they asked me not to leave." It was such a simple sentence, but it hit him like a weight he didn't see coming. She didn't push her way in. She didn't perform motherhood. She just stayed. And somehow staying had rewritten the atmosphere of a house built on grief. The next morning, Jack typed something, a document, household policy revision. He listed rules, logical ones, professional boundaries, no personal involvement, no emotional dependency, no bedtime singing, no calling staff by affectionate names. At the bottom, he added, "Maintain structure at all times." He paused, stared at that line like it meant something holy. It didn't. He emailed it to Christine. Subject line, "Protocol, effective immediately." She found it that afternoon, read it quietly in the laundry room, beneath the hum of the dryer. The light above her flickered a little. She didn't cry, didn't sigh. She just pulled a pen from her apron pocket, folded the printed copy back neatly, and scribbled one line beneath his signature space. "Structure only works when someone stays." Then she left it on the edge of his desk, beside a cooled cup of coffee he'd forgotten to drink. That night she followed the rules. She didn't sing, didn't kneel to meet the boys' eyes, didn't hold their hands when they whimpered in their sleep. By dinner, Liam was in tears. Finn had spilled juice and refused to be comforted. Jack watched from the hallway. Christine sat still on the couch, present but quiet. No rebellion, no reaction, just stillness. And even in that stillness, Jack saw it. She wasn't obeying. She was showing him something. He just didn't know what yet. That night, the house didn't rest. Not really. The lights dimmed, the doors closed, but the air still felt wrong. Too still, too clean, too quiet in all the places where love used to live. Christine folded laundry with the same steady hands, not because the rules deserved obedience, but because the boys still needed someone who wouldn't leave. And Jack. Jack sat in his office, staring at the line she'd written across his rules. Structure only works when someone stays. He read it again, then again, and still. He couldn't answer it. The memo was taped to the fridge before breakfast, crisp white paper, perfect black ink, signed with Jack's initials at the bottom like a contract he couldn't break. Christine read it in silence, her fingers smoothing the edge of the page once. Then again. No personal affection, no unnecessary contact, no humming, no emotional dependency. Maintain professional distance at all times. The list ended with one line. Structure is stability. She didn't say a word, just turned toward the counter, picked up the boys' breakfast bowls and carried them to the table with the same calm hands. But her silence felt different that morning. Not empty, just restrained. Finn and Liam were already waiting, still in their pajamas, hair tousled from sleep. Liam had his sock on backwards. Christine noticed, but she didn't kneel to fix it. She placed their bowls gently on the table. Oatmeal, 2 spoons, no fruit this time. And then she stood. Not close, not far, just present, like a lighthouse seen across fog. "Eat while it's warm," she said softly. The boys blinked up at her. Finn reached toward her scarf, the green one she always wore. She stepped back. "No touching, sweetheart," she said, then paused, correcting herself. "Finn." Upstairs, Jack stood by the railing, watching. He could hear everything. The quiet clinks of spoons, the absence of song. It was working. The house was calm, orderly. And yet, something inside him felt colder than it had the night before. Later, Christine found the twins in the hallway outside the playroom. They weren't fighting. They weren't laughing. They were just sitting there, shoulder to shoulder, backs pressed against the wall. Liam looked up at her. He didn't cry. He didn't ask. He just looked, like he was waiting for something he no longer had the words to ask for. She sat near them, not with them. She didn't sing. She didn't reach for them. She just stayed, quiet, compliant, still. By lunchtime, the silence had thickened. It wasn't peaceful anymore. Christine served sandwiches without humming, without the usual stories she told about clouds or birds or basil seeds. Finn didn't touch his plate. Liam whispered something, but not to anyone in particular. Jack sat at the far end of the table, phone beside him, unread emails open. He watched them, and for a split second he saw it. His sons, frozen in a house that was too clean to hold them. That evening, Christine slipped a folded piece of paper onto Jack's desk, the same memo, her handwriting beneath his signature. Just one line. Structure only works when someone stays. She didn't knock. She didn't ask to explain. She left it there and walked away. That night, Jack didn't sleep. He lay in bed with the lights off, the silence humming in his ears. He could still see Liam's hand reaching across the table that morning. No one had taken it. Not her. Not him. He hadn't even moved. He turned to the side. Melissa's pillow was still there, still untouched after all these months. He used to think it was a way to honor her. Now he wondered if it was just another way to run. At 2:17 a.m., he found himself in the hallway again, drawn by something he couldn't name. He stopped outside the nursery, didn't open the door, didn't knock. He just stood there, heart tight, breath shallow. Inside, the boys were asleep. Christine sat on the floor beside them, back against the crib, her scarf around her neck again. She was humming, soft, steady. The tune barely touched the air. But it was there. She had broken the rules. And Jack was glad she did. The memo was still taped to the fridge, untouched, unread, unfelt. But in the nursery, where two small boys slept without fear and a woman hummed songs that had no name, a different kind of rule was being written, one made of breath, of presence, of grace. And Jack, still standing at the door, knew this time he wasn't looking at a breach of order. He was looking at something that might save them all. Jack watched more now. Not from behind emails, not through camera feeds, but with his eyes, his own eyes, noticing things he hadn't noticed before, like how Liam pressed his thumb against the edge of the table when he was scared, or how Finn paused mid-step when someone raised their voice, even a little. He wasn't sure when he'd stopped looking, but now he couldn't stop. Christine had started singing again, not always, not loudly, but just enough. Soft melodies in the hallway, half-hummed lullabies while folding clothes, songs with no name, no words, just warmth. She never asked permission, and Jack never told her to stop. One evening, he stood just outside the kitchen. She didn't know he was there. Finn had spilled juice, a slow orange stream across the floor. Liam looked ready to panic, lower lip trembling, hands clenched into his shirt. Christine didn't scold. She didn't rush. She crouched down to the boy's level, voice steady. "Let's breathe," she whispered. "Big belly breaths, okay? In and out." Liam mirrored her. Finn followed. 3 breaths, 4, 5. The room calmed. Then, without a word, Christine handed Finn a small towel, held his hand over the mess, and waited. He wiped it once, then again. She nodded. "That's it. We clean up together." Not Jack because blinked. It was profound, but because it was so simple. No lectures, no fear, no raised tones, just presence. Later that night, he stood at the bottom of the stairs, one hand resting on the banister. Diane passed behind him with a laundry basket, her steps slow. "You've been quiet," she said gently. Jack didn't answer right away. Then, finally, "She never raises her voice." Diane nodded. "Doesn't have to." Jack looked up the stairs toward the nursery, then back at the empty hallway. She never tries to be their mother. No, Diane said, setting the basket down. She just loves them like someone who remembers what it's like to be small. The next afternoon, Christine asked for 10 minutes of his time at the dining room table. No contracts, no staff in sight, just paper, a pen, a cup of tea between them. "I've drawn up a structure," she said quietly. Jack lifted an eyebrow. "For what?" "For the house," she replied. "But not just the house, for the people in it." She slid the paper toward him. It wasn't complicated. A weekly rhythm, simple roles for each staff member, clear breaks, boundaries, and one request, written at the bottom in calm, clean handwriting. "One night a week you're here, not as the boss, as their father." Jack stared at the page, the weight of those words pressed into his chest. He looked up. Christine met his eyes. No challenge, no push, just stillness. He cleared his throat. "That's ambitious." Christine's mouth curved slightly. "So are your quarterly projections." He didn't say yes, but he didn't say no. And somehow, that was enough for now. That evening, he found Finn sitting near the windowsill, a coloring book open but untouched. Christine was in the kitchen, her back turned, humming again. Jack walked over slowly, sat on the floor beside his son. Finn didn't look up, but he leaned gently into Jack's side, just enough to be felt, not enough to make a sound. Jack didn't speak, didn't move away, just sat there for a while. And that was new. Later that night, Christine wiped down the chalkboard in the kitchen. The day's notes were smudged, faint. She picked up a piece of white chalk, hesitated, then wrote 3 small words across the top. Still watching, still learning. She didn't sign her name. She didn't need to. And upstairs, where Jack sat beside 2 sleeping boys, the window cracked just enough to let the night air in. He knew what those words meant. They weren't for the house. They were for him. It started with a photo. Blurry. Off-center. Taken through the hedge by someone walking their dog on a Sunday morning. Christine, kneeling in the garden, her hands covered in soil. Finn, laughing as he painted a rock with blue and green swirls. Liam beside her, holding a tiny watering can like it was holy. The light had been soft that day. Spring air still cool, sky wide and forgiving. Christine's scarf had slipped halfway from her neck, resting on her shoulder like it belonged there. And they looked happy, not posed, just safe. By Monday morning, the photo had been shared 11,000 times. Billionaire's Maid plays mom. Tech CEO's twins find comfort in unlikely caregiver. Inside the Edward estate, where is their father? The words didn't bother Jack at first. He didn't even read them. He saw the picture, he recognized the moment, and it hurt. How beautiful it was. Because he hadn't been in it. Christine found out by accident. A phone left unlocked on the laundry counter. Diane's screen lit up with a headline before it dimmed. Christine didn't react right away, just stared at the screen as the dryer hummed beside her, soft and steady. She touched the scarf at her shoulder, not for comfort, just to feel something grounded. That afternoon the house felt different. The walls hadn't changed, but the quiet had. It wasn't peace anymore. It was caution. Jack called a meeting. The PR team suggested a statement. "We'll clarify her role," someone said. "Reframe the narrative," another added. "Protect the family brand." Jack stared at the table, at words that had nothing to do with what mattered. He stood, left the meeting without speaking. Later, he found Christine in the garden. She was planting basil with the boys. Liam sat in the dirt, barefoot, humming softly. Finn had placed 2 painted stones at the base of a tomato stem. Jack watched from the edge of the patio, not stepping in, not interrupting, just watching. When the boys went inside for snacks, Christine remained, brushing soil from her hands. "You saw it?" she asked quietly, still facing the garden. "I did." She nodded. "So did everyone else." A pause. Jack stepped closer, still not near enough to touch it. This moment, This woman, this wound. They want a statement, he said. Christine finally looked up. And what will it say? Jack hesitated. That you're the help, that I'm aware, that it's being addressed. Christine nodded again, but her eyes, they didn't agree. I didn't ask for attention, she said, and I never asked to be their mother. I know, Jack replied. She stood wiping her palms on her apron. Her voice was low but steady. They just needed someone to stay when everyone else left. Jack swallowed. The air felt thick. They don't see that, she added. They see a headline, a mistake. You're not a mistake, he said quietly. That night, Jack sat on the edge of his bed. Laptop open, PR statement blank. He typed something, deleted it, typed again, deleted again. Finally, he shut the screen. The silence in the room felt louder than ever. He didn't want to protect his image. He wanted to protect them. The next morning, the headlines hadn't stopped, but neither had Christine. She made pancakes, cut fruit, braided Liam's hair when he asked, lopsided, messy, perfect. Jack watched her from the hallway. She looked tired, but not defeated. The boys didn't know about the internet, about shame, about optics. They only knew the scarf still smelled like lavender, and her lap still felt like home. That evening, Christine didn't hum. She just rocked gently in the nursery chair, Liam curled against her chest, Finn asleep at her feet on a folded blanket. Jack stood in the doorway, not hidden this time. He was there, really there. He didn't speak, didn't plan, just watched the way her fingers moved. Slow, steady, like someone who knew how to hold a storm without trying to stop the rain. It started with Liam's cough, soft, harmless, barely more than a whisper in the night. Then came Finn's shiver, the kind that made Christine stop mid-step in the hallway, because something in her, something from long ago, recognized that sound. By midnight, both boys were burning up, skin flushed, breaths shallow, their tiny bodies too still. Jack stood at the door to the nursery, eyes wide, arms stiff at his sides, like a man facing a storm with nothing in his hands. Christine didn't panic. She moved calmly, quietly, placing cool cloths on their foreheads, checking pulses, whispering comfort like a prayer she knew by heart. When Finn whimpered in his sleep, she leaned in. I'm here, she breathed. I'm still here. Jack watched. Something in his chest tightened. Not panic, not control. Helplessness, the kind he had no system for. At 2:08 a.m., he finally stepped in, stiff, unsure, eyes hollow. What do I do? He asked. Christine didn't look up. She just handed him a wet cloth and pointed to Finn's cheek. Cool him gently. Keep your hand steady. He knelt, awkward, like his knees forgot how to hold weight. His hands shook. I don't know how to do this, he whispered. Christine didn't correct him. She didn't fill the space with reassurance. She just said the words that mattered. You don't have to know. You just have to stay. The room was warm, dim. Liam stirred in his fever sleep. Jack reached for him, and the boy, barely conscious, turned toward the sound of his father's breath. Not his words, not his touch, just the breath. Jack sat down hard on the floor and didn't leave. At 3:17 a.m., Christine leaned back against the wall. The boys were still burning, but their breathing had steadied. Jack's shirt was damp with sweat. One of the twins had curled into his lap, the other against Christine's shoulder. And in that small, heavy room, something broke. Not the fever. Jack. Quietly. Finally. He bowed his head, pressed his hand against his eyes, and let the grief come. Not loud, not messy, just real. The tears weren't for Melissa. They were for everything that came after. The numbness, the silence, the way he'd left the house but never really left the pain. Christine looked over, didn't say anything. Just reached across the rug and placed her hand over his, not as comfort, but as permission. You're allowed to feel this, and still stay. By dawn, the fevers began to drop. The room smelled of lemon balm and damp cloth. Sunlight touched the windows without asking for anything. Christine sat in the rocker, eyes closed, one hand resting on Liam's back. Jack hadn't moved. Finn was still asleep against his chest. The world was quiet, but not empty. Later, Christine walked into the kitchen. She didn't speak, didn't make noise. She picked up a piece of chalk and wrote 3 words on the board above the stove. Everyone stayed. No signature, no explanation, just that. Jack stood in the hallway, watching her hand leave the board. He felt something rise in his chest, small, unfamiliar. Not relief, not pride. Something softer, like belief. Beginning again. The house had never been this quiet, not even after the funeral. But this silence didn't feel like absence, it felt like surrender, like presence that no longer needed to be explained. And as Jack turned back toward the nursery, his sleeves still damp, his chest still aching, he whispered to no one in particular, "I stayed." As if saying it out loud might make it real. The fever broke, but something else stayed broken. Not in the boys, not in Christine, in Jack. The morning after, the house moved slowly. No meetings, no press calls, no scheduling apps buzzing. Just warm toast, 2 blankets on the floor, a cold cup of coffee no one drank. Jack sat at the kitchen table, eyes red, sleeves rolled to his elbows. Christine moved around him, not avoiding, not approaching, just with him. There was nothing to fix, nothing to say. The night had already spoken. He found the boys in the living room later that afternoon, both curled on the rug beneath a window, crayons scattered around them like flower petals. The light fell soft across the carpet, long beams of quiet. Liam looked up and reached for Jack's hand without hesitation. Jack sat down beside him, slowly, carefully, as if something holy had settled on this house and he didn't want to disturb it. He didn't speak. He just let Liam climb into his lap. Finn soon followed, and there, in that sacred hush of a room once ruled by control, he let them be close. Christine watched from the hallway for a moment. She didn't enter, didn't interrupt. She just smiled, small, tired, real, and walked back to the kitchen. She had started something, but she didn't need to own it. She only needed to keep holding space. By evening, the quiet was starting to feel like peace, until the black car pulled up, and Victoria stepped out. Jack's mother hadn't visited since Melissa's funeral. Too many headlines, too much grief, too many reasons to stay safely distant. But now, with stories spreading and photos still circulating, she'd arrived. Silver hair pinned tightly, pearls like armor, shoes that didn't tolerate carpets. She walked into the house without knocking, the kind of entrance built from old money, old pain, and a voice that had always been listened to. Christine was in the kitchen with the boys, washing grapes. Victoria stopped in the doorway. "This is the woman?" Christine turned. "Hello." Victoria didn't answer. She turned to Jack instead, her voice sharp enough to chill the room. "You've let this go on long enough." Jack didn't flinch, didn't defend. He looked down at the boys, Liam holding a paper towel with 3 grapes inside, like it was something precious. Victoria crossed her arms. "This is inappropriate, Jack. You know how this looks." "She's not pretending to be their mother," he said. "No," Victoria replied. "She's something worse. Confusing, unprofessional, emotional." Christine said nothing. She picked up a dish rag, folded it once, then again. Stillness was her defense. Jack knelt beside the boys. He wiped Finn's hands gently, then looked back at his mother. "She's the only one who didn't leave." Victoria blinked. Jack stood. He didn't raise his voice, didn't posture. He simply said the truth. "We're not trading their peace for your approval." That night the house was quiet again, but it wasn't fragile anymore. It was firm. The boys were asleep by 8. Christine sat on the nursery floor, sorting blocks and broken crayons into a small box. Jack stood by the door, unsure whether to speak. She looked up. "You didn't have to say that," she said softly. "I did." Christine smiled. Tired, kind, not triumphant. Most people don't. Jack walked in, lowered himself to the rug. His knees cracked. His tie was still on. He picked up a red crayon. "You're not most people," he said. The hallway light stayed on later than usual that night. No one said why. No one turned it off. The carpet held the shape of where they'd sat, crayon marks, warmth pressed into its fibers, like evidence that something human had happened. And though nothing dramatic changed, something quiet had. Jack had drawn his first line, not in ink, not in power, but in presence. And for the first time. He didn't look back. The headlines didn't stop, not even after the press team went silent. Not after Jack shut down interviews, declined statements, refused to spin the story. Still, the internet buzzed. Who is Christine James? A maid or a mother? Behind the Edward estate's closed doors. She ignored it, as she always had, until the letter arrived. It came folded in a plain envelope, slid beneath the back door during nap time. No name, no return address. Just one line in careful script. "We don't need your story framed. We just want the truth, and we'll give it room to breathe." It was signed by a local journalist, not tabloid, not loud, just a woman known for listening. Christine stared at it for a long time. She didn't answer right away. That evening, Jack found her in the garden. The boys were asleep. The basil had finally taken root. She sat on the bench alone, the envelope beside her. Jack didn't ask what it was. He just sat down beside her, hands folded, shoulders close but not touching. After a long silence, she finally said, "They want to tell the truth." Jack looked out across the garden, then at her. "What truth?" Christine's voice didn't shake. "That I stayed, not because I was hired to, but because they asked me not to leave." Jack nodded once. "They'll twist it," he said quietly. "I know." Another pause. "But I'm tired of being someone people explain." She looked at him then, clear, calm, brave. "I'm not their mother, but I am part of this house, and they know it. That should be enough." Jack didn't try to stop her, not this time. He reached over slowly and placed his hand gently over hers on the bench. "Then tell it," he said. "Your way." The article went live 3 days later. No pictures, no headlines, no viral spin, just a title that sat softly on the page. "The work that holds the house." No quotes from Jack, no exposure of the children, only Christine's voice, measured, honest, quiet. She spoke of grief, of losing her parents in a fire, of raising her little sister on nothing but instinct and prayer, of silence, and staying. "I don't fix children," she wrote. "I don't replace mothers. I just stay in the room long enough for them to remember they're still loved." There were no interviews, no book deal, no follow-up. But something changed. A neighbor left a casserole at the gate. Someone dropped off sidewalk chalk and a box of strawberries. The mailman asked if Christine could teach his wife how to grow basil, and when the delivery woman brought groceries, she handed the receipt to Christine, not the security guard. Jack read the article alone, twice, then a third time. When he reached the final line, he had to stop reading, not because it broke him, but because it felt like someone had handed him a mirror. He whispered the last sentence out loud just to hear it. "Love is not loud, it's what you do after the room goes quiet." That night, Christine made pasta, and the boys stirred the sauce. Finn added too much salt. Liam dropped a spoon. Nobody corrected anyone. They just laughed. Christine wiped the counter. Jack set 2 small plates at the table, and the air, once sterile, heavy, felt lived in. Later that night, Christine found a small stone on the porch, painted, crooked. A child's hand had drawn a heart in red. Beneath it, a word in shaky marker. Home. She picked it up, turned it over once, then walked inside and placed it gently on the kitchen windowsill, right beside the vase of wildflowers she hadn't bought, but someone had left without needing to be seen. Spring didn't arrive all at once. It crept in slowly, through cracked windows, half-open doors, and bare feet on cool grass. The tulips out front bloomed sideways, crooked, wild, but they bloomed. Christine stood in the garden with the boys, kneeling in the dirt, showing them how to press basil roots gently into the soil. Liam asked why they had to leave space between the plants. Christine smiled. "So they can breathe," she said. "Even roots need room." Jack watched from the kitchen, the same kitchen that used to smell like silence and structure. Now it smelled like sun-warmed fruit and something softer. His laptop sat closed on the counter, his phone face down. And for the first time in a long time, he wasn't late for anything. Later that morning, Finn brought him a crayon drawing, 3 stick figures holding hands, one tall, 2 small. Underneath in red crayon, 1 word: home. Jack didn't say anything at first. He just traced the lines with his eyes, then looked at his son. "Who's that?" he asked, pointing to the tall figure. Finn didn't hesitate. "You." Christine was folding laundry when he found her in the hallway. No makeup, hair up, a tea stain on her shirt. He held up the drawing. "He sees me." Christine nodded, eyes soft. "He's always been looking." Jack looked down at the page again, then back at her. "I've been trying to build something strong," he said. "A legacy. A future." "And?" she asked. Jack's voice was quiet. "Turns out I just had to stop building and start being." They didn't hug, didn't cry. Just stood there for a moment. 2 people who had survived something together, even if they'd never said it out loud. That evening, they ate outside. Paper plates, spilled lemonade, birdsong filling the spaces between conversations. No one was performing. No one was afraid. Christine sat on the grass, barefoot, Liam curled in her lap, Finn leaning against Jack's side, one hand tangled in his shirt, and the sound of the house, for the first time in a long time, wasn't silence. It was laughter, soft, unforced, true. After bedtime, Jack walked through the house slowly, room by room. Melissa's piano still sat in the corner, untouched, but the air around it no longer hurt. He didn't cry, didn't speak. He just rested his hand on the top for a moment, then turned off the light. In the kitchen, Christine had left something on the chalkboard, white chalk. Simple words: "Trust built here." Beneath it, Jack picked up a piece of chalk and added his name. Then slowly, he bent down, and in the corner of the board, he drew 2 tiny initials, FL. The next morning, the garden was damp with dew. Christine opened the back door, barefoot, cradling a painted rock. She placed it on the windowsill. A gift from Finn scrawled in messy red marker. 1 word: stay. And maybe that was the miracle all along. Not that things had healed perfectly, not that grief had disappeared, but that in a house once built on silence, someone stayed long enough for love to grow roots. And in the end, it wasn't about saving anyone. It was about being there. When the crying started, when the fever spiked, when the quiet came. Home wasn't built in the marble or the money. It was built in the hum of a song with no words, in the grip of a tiny hand on a shirt sleeve, in the stillness shared between broken hearts, learning how to beat again. Jack stood by the door that morning, coffee in hand, watching as the boys ran barefoot into the sunlight, Christine chasing them with a smile that didn't need permission. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel like someone managing a family. He felt like someone who had one. "Daddy?" The words stopped Robert Scott's heart. He stood in his own doorway, frozen, staring at something he couldn't understand. His 10-year-old daughter was on her knees, scrubbing the floor in a maid's uniform. Her hands were bleeding. Her face was soaked with tears. And beside her, dressed the same way, was Jennifer, the housemaid he barely knew. Robert dropped his briefcase. What the hell is going on? Robert had been gone for 6 months. Tokyo, Singapore, London, building his company into something powerful. He'd missed Ava's birthday, her school play, half her life, but he'd promised himself this was the last trip. He'd come home and make everything right. He walked through the door expecting his daughter to run to him with that bright smile she used to have. Instead, she flinched when she heard his voice. She was terrified. Jennifer stood up slowly, hands raised like she was trying to calm him down. "Mr. Scott, please, if I could just explain." "Explain what?" Robert's voice cracked. "Why is my daughter dressed like this? Why is she on her knees in her own home?" "She didn't do anything," Ava tried to say, but her voice was so small it barely came out. Then he heard footsteps on the stairs. His wife, Diane, walked down with a cup of coffee in her hand and concern painted across her face. But something about it felt wrong. Too perfect, too practiced. "Robert," she said softly, touching his arm. "Thank God you're here. I just found them like this. I don't know what's been happening while you were gone, but I think Jennifer has been getting too close to Ava, making her do things she shouldn't." Robert looked at his wife, then at Jennifer, then at his daughter. Ava wasn't looking at him. She was looking at Jennifer, like Jennifer was the only person in the world she could trust. And that's when Robert realized something that made his stomach turn. He'd been gone for 6 months, and he had no idea what had been happening in his own house. Someone was lying, and he was about to find out who. What Robert didn't know was that a camera in the corner had recorded everything. Not just this moment, but what happened 1 hour before he walked through that door. The truth, the abuse, the cruelty his daughter had been living through, and the one person who'd been protecting her when no one else would. Before we continue, click subscribe, like this video, and tell me where in the world you're watching from. Sometimes God places people in our lives not because we asked for them, but because someone we love desperately needs them. Jennifer stepped in when a father was absent. But the question is, are you truly present for the people who need you most? I hope this story reminds you that love isn't just a feeling. It's showing up, even when it's hard, even when no one's watching. Now let's go back to 1 hour before Robert came home. Let's see what really happened. Only moments before Robert walked through that door, his daughter's world was falling apart. It started in the kitchen. Ava was thirsty, that's all. She climbed onto the step stool, the one with the old sunflower stickers her mum put there years ago. Her small hands reached for a glass of water, and it slipped. The glass fell. Water splashed across the counter and onto the floor. Ava's heart stopped. She grabbed a towel, her hands shaking, trying to clean it up before. "What did you just do?" Diane's voice came from behind her, cold, angry. "I'm sorry," Ava whispered. "It was an accident. I'll clean it." "An accident?" Diane crossed the room fast. Too fast. She grabbed Ava's arm hard enough to hurt. "You're always breaking things, always making a mess." "I didn't mean to." "You never mean to." Diane's fingers dug deeper into Ava's skin. "But you keep doing it anyway. Maybe it's time you learned what it costs to live in this house." She dragged Ava down the hall. Ava stumbled, tears streaming down her face, trying to keep up. Upstairs, Jennifer was folding laundry when she heard crying. Not the normal cry of a child who fell or got scared. This was different, deeper, like something inside was breaking. Jennifer dropped everything and ran. She found them outside the laundry room. Ava was on the floor, face buried in her hands, shaking. Diane stood over her, holding a black maid's uniform. "Ma'am," Jennifer said carefully, "what happened?" "She spilled water," Diane said without looking at her. "She needs to learn responsibility." "She's just a child," Jennifer said gently. "It was an accident." Diane turned, her eyes cold. "She's careless, spoiled, and she's going to learn what it means to earn her place here." She shoved the uniform toward Jennifer. "Put this on her." Jennifer's stomach dropped. "Ma'am, please." "I'm not asking." Jennifer looked at Ava. The little girl was staring up at her with terrified eyes that said, "Please don't leave me." Jennifer knelt beside her and took the uniform. "It's okay, baby," she whispered. "I'm here." Her hands shook as she helped Ava into the rough fabric. It hung too big on the child's thin body. Ava looked so small, so lost. "Now," Diane said, pointing to the living room, "you're going to scrub that floor until it shines. Do you understand?" Ava nodded through her tears. Jennifer stood. "Ma'am, this is too much. She's frightened." "Are you questioning me?" Diane's voice went quiet. "Dangerous." Jennifer swallowed. "I'm asking you to show mercy." Diane smiled. It wasn't kind. "You want to defend her? Fine. Get on your knees too, both of you. Jennifer's heart pounded. Mom, do it, or she does it alone, and I'll make sure she knows you chose to walk away. Jennifer looked at Ava. The little girl was shaking, waiting to see if Jennifer would stay. Jennifer knelt. She picked up a rag from the bucket Diane placed between them. It's okay, sweetheart, she whispered to Ava. I'm right here. You're not alone. Ava sobbed. I'm sorry, Miss Jennifer. Shh, this isn't your fault. They scrubbed side by side, Ava's small hands barely able to hold the cloth, Jennifer whispering comfort with every stroke, Diane watching from her chair with that cold smile. That's when Robert opened the door. Robert's eyes locked on Jennifer. She was on her knees beside his daughter, both of them in uniform, both of them looking guilty. His mind tried to make sense of it, tried to find an explanation that didn't tear his world apart. And the only thing he could see was Jennifer, the maid, the woman he barely knew, dressed the same way as his daughter. Did you do this? His voice came out harder than he meant. Did you put her up to this? Jennifer stood slowly, her movements careful, her hands raised like she was trying to show she meant no harm. Mr. Scott, please, if you'll just let me explain. Explain what? Robert's voice cracked. My daughter is on her knees, dressed like she works here, and you're right beside her doing the same thing. What am I supposed to think? Daddy, she didn't. Ava tried to speak, but her voice was so small it barely made it out. Sweetheart, it's okay. Robert moved toward her, but Ava flinched. Actually flinched, like she was afraid of what would happen next. That stopped him cold. Oh, Robert. Diane's voice floated down from the stairs, soft, concerned, perfectly timed. Thank God you're finally home. She came down slowly, one hand trailing along the railing, the other holding her coffee cup like she was in a movie. Her silk robe was perfectly tied, her hair perfectly styled. Everything about her looked calm, controlled, too controlled. I just walked in myself, Diane said, reaching for his arm. I found them like this. I've been so worried about what's been happening while you've been away. Robert looked at his wife, then at Jennifer, then at his daughter. Something didn't fit. What do you mean? What's been happening? He asked. Diane's hand tightened on his arm. She's been overstepping, Robert. She glanced at Jennifer without really looking at her. Getting too involved with Ava, making her do things. I don't know if it's some kind of game or... That's not true. Jennifer's voice was quiet but steady. Diane's eyes flashed. Excuse me? Ma'am. Jennifer didn't look away. You know that's not what happened here. The air shifted. Robert felt it. Something in Jennifer's voice, something in the way Diane's smile tightened just slightly at the corners. Are you calling me a liar? Diane's voice was still soft, but there was steel underneath. I'm saying there's more to this story. Robert looked at Ava. She was staring at Jennifer like she was the only safe thing in the room. Not at him, not at Diane, at Jennifer. His daughter trusted the maid more than she trusted her own family. That thought hit him like a punch to the chest. Mr. Scott, Jennifer said carefully, there's a security camera in the other room, the one near the bookshelf. If you check it, you'll see what really happened. Robert froze. How do you know about that? I saw the technician installing it before you left. Please, just check it. Diane's face flickered, just for a second. Something close to panic crossed her eyes before she smoothed it away. Robert, don't be ridiculous. She's obviously trying to... But Robert was already pulling out his phone. His fingers moved across the screen, opening the security app he'd installed months ago. The app he'd almost forgotten about. Diane took a step back. Robert, this is unnecessary. I'm telling you what I saw. Then the camera will show the same thing. His voice was flat. The app loaded. Camera feeds appeared. He scrolled through them, finding the one Jennifer mentioned. He pressed play, and his face went white. Robert stared at his phone screen. The footage played in silence, but he didn't need sound to understand what he was seeing. Ava reaching for the glass. It falling. Water spilling across the counter. Then Diane storming in, her face twisted with rage. Her hand grabbing Ava's arm so hard the child's body jerked sideways, her mouth moving, shouting words Robert couldn't hear but could feel in his chest. Ava trying to apologize, trying to clean it up, her small body trembling. Diane dragging her down the hall. Then Jennifer appearing, stepping between them, her hands raised, trying to calm the situation. Diane shoving the uniform at her, forcing it into Jennifer's hands. Jennifer kneeling beside Ava, not because she wanted to, but because leaving the child alone wasn't an option. Robert's hand shook. He looked up from the phone. His eyes found Diane's. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Robert, you have to understand." "Understand what?" His voice was low. "Dangerous. That you put my daughter in a maid's uniform? That you made her scrub floors like she's—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "She needed discipline," Diane said quickly. Her voice was rising now, losing that careful control. "You're never here, Robert. Someone has to teach her consequences." "Consequences?" Robert's voice cracked. "She's 10 years old. She spilled water. She's careless. She destroys things. She needs to learn. She needs a parent." The words exploded out of him. "Not a warden." Diane's face went hard. "So that's it? One video and I'm the villain? What about her?" She pointed at Jennifer. "She's been manipulating Ava for months, making her dependent, acting like some kind of replacement mother." Robert looked at Jennifer. She hadn't moved, hadn't defended herself. She just stood there, hands folded, eyes down, calm, steady, like she'd been carrying this weight for so long she'd learned how to hold it without breaking. "Is that true?" Robert asked her. Jennifer looked up. Her eyes met his. "I love your daughter, Mr. Scott. That's true. But I never tried to replace anyone. I just tried to make sure she knew she wasn't alone." The words hit him like stones. She wasn't alone. Because he'd left her. He'd chosen boardrooms over bedtime stories, deals over dinners, success over his own child. He turned to Ava. She was still on the floor, still in that uniform, clutching her stuffed lion like it was the only thing keeping her together. "Sweetheart," he said, his voice breaking, "why didn't you tell me?" Ava's lip trembled. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "She said you wouldn't believe me. She said you'd think I was lying because I didn't like her. She said you'd send me away." Robert's chest caved in. "She said," Ava's voice broke. "She said you'd be happier if I wasn't here." Robert dropped to his knees in front of his daughter. He reached for her, and this time she didn't flinch. She fell into his arms, sobbing against his chest. "I'm so sorry," he whispered into her hair. "I'm so sorry, baby." He looked up at Diane, the woman he'd married, the woman he'd trusted with his daughter. "Pack your things," he said quietly. "You're leaving tonight." Diane's face went pale. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious in my life." "Robert, you're making a mistake." "The mistake," he said, his voice cold, "was ever leaving her alone with you." Diane's mouth opened, but nothing came out. For the first time since he'd known her, she had no words. She turned and walked up the stairs. Her heels clicked against the wood, each step sharper than the last. Robert held his daughter tighter, and over Ava's shoulder he saw Jennifer, still standing there, still steady, still the person who'd protected his child when he hadn't. "Thank you," he whispered. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. Because some things don't need words. The house felt different after Diane left. Quieter, but not peaceful, just empty. Robert sat in the kitchen with Ava curled up beside him on the counter stool. She was still wearing that uniform. He'd tried to help her take it off, but she'd pulled away. Not because she was angry. Because she was scared to let go of Jennifer, who was standing by the sink making hot chocolate. Robert watched them. The way Jennifer moved around his daughter, careful, gentle, like she knew exactly what Ava needed without being told. She poured the hot chocolate into Ava's favorite mug, the one with the chipped handle that Ava refused to throw away because her mother gave it to her. Robert hadn't remembered which mug that was, but Jennifer did. She set it down in front of Ava with a soft smile. "Careful, sweetheart. It's hot." Ava wrapped her small hands around the cup and whispered, "Thank you, Miss Jennifer." Jennifer brushed a strand of hair from Ava's face. A simple gesture, tender, familiar, like she'd done it 1,000 times before. Robert's chest tightened. How many nights had his daughter needed someone to brush her hair back? How many times had she cried herself to sleep while he was on another continent? How many moments like this had he missed? Mr. Scott, Jennifer said quietly, would you like some coffee? He shook his head. No, thank you. The silence stretched. Jennifer started to excuse herself. I should go. Let you two. Stay. The word came out before Robert could stop it. Please. Jennifer hesitated, then nodded. They sat together at the kitchen table, Ava between them, the three of them in a triangle of unspoken understanding. Robert didn't know what to say, didn't know how to thank someone for doing what he should have been doing all along. How long? He finally asked. His voice was rough, tired. Jennifer looked down at her hands. About 3 months, after you left for Singapore. 3 months, a quarter of a year. His daughter had been suffering for 3 months, and he hadn't known. Why didn't you call me? He asked. Why didn't you tell me what was happening? Jennifer's eyes met his. There was no judgment there, just sadness. She threatened me, Mr. Scott. Said, if I told you, she'd make sure you didn't believe me. Said she'd tell you I was stealing, that I was the problem. She paused. And honestly, I didn't know if you'd listen. The words cut deeper than she probably meant them to, because she was right. If she'd called him in the middle of a board meeting and told him his wife was abusing his daughter, would he have believed her? Would he have dropped everything and come home? Or would he have told her he'd handle it later? Robert looked at Ava. She'd fallen asleep against Jennifer's shoulder, the hot chocolate barely touched. Jennifer held her without thinking, one arm wrapped protectively around the child, the other hand resting gently on Ava's back. Like she'd held her before, like this was normal. She trusts you, Robert said quietly. Jennifer looked down at Ava, her expression soft. She shouldn't have had to. But she did, and you stayed. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. I couldn't leave her alone, Mr. Scott. I couldn't walk away knowing what would happen when no one was watching. Robert's throat closed. This woman, this stranger he'd hired and barely spoken to, had protected his daughter when he hadn't, had stood between Ava and cruelty, had chosen to kneel beside a child who wasn't hers rather than let her suffer alone. I don't know how to thank you, he whispered. Jennifer shook her head. You don't owe me anything. Just be here. That's all she's ever wanted. Robert looked at his daughter sleeping in another woman's arms, and he realized something that broke him completely. He'd been so busy trying to give Ava everything. He'd forgotten to give her the one thing she actually needed. Him. Robert carried Ava upstairs while Jennifer followed quietly behind. They reached Ava's room, the one with the pale yellow walls her mother had painted before she died. The room still smelled faintly of lavender from the sachets tucked in the dresser drawers. Robert laid Ava down gently and pulled the blanket over her. She stirred slightly, reaching for something in her sleep. Jennifer moved past him without a word and placed the stuffed lion in Ava's arms. The little girl's fingers curled around it immediately, and she settled. Robert watched. Jennifer knew exactly where the lion went, knew which side of the bed Ava slept on, knew to leave the lamp on low because Ava was afraid of complete darkness. She knew his daughter better than he did. They stepped into the hallway, leaving the door cracked open just enough to let the light in. Mr. Scott, Jennifer said softly, there's something you should see. She led him downstairs to a small room off the kitchen, the one where the staff kept their things. Jennifer opened her locker and pulled out a worn notebook. The cover was bent, the pages creased from being opened and closed so many times. She handed it to him. I've been writing down everything, she said quietly. Every time she hurt Ava, every time she said something cruel, every time Ava cried herself to sleep. I didn't know what else to do. Robert opened the notebook. The first entry was dated 3 months ago. June 14th, Mrs. Scott told Ava she'd never be as pretty as her mother. Ava didn't eat dinner, found her crying in the bathroom. His hands started shaking. June 22nd, Ava wasn't allowed to leave her room all day because she laughed too loud at breakfast. Mrs. Scott said she was being disrespectful. July 8th, Mrs. Scott called Ava a mistake, said her father only keeps her around out of obligation. Robert's vision blurred. Page after page, entry after entry. Months of pain his daughter had endured while he was closing deals and chasing success. August 3rd, Ava asked if her daddy still loved her. I told her yes, but I don't think she believed me. Robert's knees buckled. He sat down hard on the bench by the wall, the notebook still open in his hands. "Why didn't she tell me?" His voice cracked. "Why didn't she say something on our video calls?" Jennifer sat beside him. "She tried once. About a month ago. She started to tell you something, and Mrs. Scott walked into the room. After you hung up, Mrs. Scott told Ava that if she ever said anything again, you'd send her to boarding school, that you'd think she was lying to get attention." Robert's chest felt like it was caving in. "She made Ava believe you didn't want to hear it," Jennifer continued, "that you were too busy, too important, that complaining would just make you love her less." Robert buried his face in his hands. He'd failed her. Completely. Utterly. Failed her. "I should have been here," he whispered. "I should have seen it." Jennifer's hand rested gently on his shoulder. "You're here now. That's what matters." "Is it?" Robert looked up at her, his eyes red. "Is it enough, after everything she's been through?" Jennifer's voice was steady, certain. "She's been waiting for you to come home, Mr. Scott, not because she needed you to save her, but because she just wanted her dad." The words broke something inside him. All the money, all the success, all the deals and the power and the empire he'd built, none of it mattered, because the one person who needed him most had been suffering in silence, and he'd been too far away to hear her. Robert closed the notebook carefully, like it was something sacred. "What do I do now?" he asked. "How do I fix this?" Jennifer looked toward the stairs, toward Ava's room. "You stay, you listen, you show her that you're not going anywhere." She paused. "And you let her be angry, let her cry, let her tell you everything she's been holding inside, even if it hurts to hear." Robert nodded, wiping his eyes. He'd spent 6 months building something that would last. Now he had to rebuild something he'd almost destroyed. His daughter's trust. Robert didn't sleep that night. He sat in Ava's doorway, watching her breathe, watching her clutch that stuffed lion, watching for signs that she was safe, that she was really okay. But every time she shifted in her sleep, his heart jumped. Every small sound made him wonder if she was crying, if she was having nightmares about everything Diane had done. He'd called his lawyer at midnight, left a message about divorce papers, about restraining orders, about making sure Diane never came near his daughter again. But even as he said the words, a small voice in the back of his mind whispered, "What if it's too late? What if you've already lost her?" Morning came too fast. Robert was making breakfast when the doorbell rang. He opened the door to find a woman in an expensive suit standing on his porch. Her expression was cold, professional. "Robert Scott?" "Yes." She handed him an envelope. "You've been served." His stomach dropped. He opened it right there. The words jumped off the page like knives. Emergency custody petition. Unstable home environment. Inappropriate relationship between employer and employee. Endangerment of minor child. Robert's hands shook. "What is this?" The woman's voice was flat. "Mrs. Scott is filing for custody of your daughter. She's citing concerns about the child's welfare and your relationship with the housemaid." The word hung in the air like poison. "There is no relationship," Robert said through clenched teeth. "Jennifer protected my daughter when my wife was abusing her. That will be for the court to decide." The woman turned to leave, then paused. "You should also know Mrs. Scott has witnesses. Friends who will testify to your extended absences and to the closeness between you and Miss Gibson." She walked away before Robert could respond. He stood there, holding the papers, his mind racing. Diane was going to twist everything. She was going to make Jennifer look like a homewrecker, make him look like a negligent father, make Ava look like a pawn in some affair that didn't exist. And the worst part? Some of it was true. He had been absent. He had been negligent. He had left his daughter vulnerable. "Mr. Scott?" He turned. Jennifer stood in the hallway, her face pale. "I heard," she said quietly. "The doorbell woke me." Robert looked at the papers in his hand, then at Jennifer, this woman who'd sacrificed everything to protect his daughter. "She's coming after you too," he said. "She's going to try to destroy you." Jennifer's jaw tightened. "Let her try." "Jennifer, you don't understand. She has money, lawyers, friends in high places. She's going to dig into your past. She's going to twist everything you've done into something ugly." "I know." Jennifer's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "But I'm not leaving, Ava. I don't care what she does to me." Robert stared at her. This woman, who owed him nothing, who could walk away right now and protect herself. But she wouldn't, because she loved his daughter, more than he'd shown he did. The thought hit him like a punch. "I can't ask you to do this," Robert said. "I can't let you sacrifice yourself." "You're not asking." Jennifer's eyes met his. "I'm choosing." Upstairs, a door opened. They both looked up to see Ava standing at the top of the stairs in her pajamas, holding her lion. Her voice was small, scared. "Is she coming back?" Robert's heart shattered, because his daughter wasn't asking if Diane was coming back. She was asking if the nightmare was starting again. He climbed the stairs and knelt in front of her. "No, baby. I promise you, she's not coming back." "But what if she takes me away?" Ava's eyes filled with tears. "What if the court says I have to go with her?" Robert pulled her into his arms. "That's not going to happen." But even as he said it, holding his daughter tight, he felt the weight of the papers in his hand, and he knew the battle had only just begun. Robert sat in his office that afternoon with the door closed. The custody papers were spread across his desk. Legal language, cold facts, a twisted version of his life written by Diane's lawyers. Father repeatedly absent for extended periods. Child left in care of household staff. Inappropriate emotional dependency between minor and employee. Every word felt like an accusation, because some of it was true. He had been gone. He had left Ava with people he barely knew. He had put his company before his daughter. And now someone else was paying the price. Jennifer. A knock on the door pulled him from his thoughts. "Come in." Jennifer stepped inside, her movements hesitant. "I'm sorry to bother you. I just wanted to say, if you need me to leave, I understand." Robert looked up. "Leave? For the case?" Jennifer's voice was quiet but steady. "If my being here makes things harder for you and Ava, I can go. I can find another job. Her voice caught. "I just want what's best for her." Robert stood. "You think leaving is what's best for her?" "I think losing her would destroy me," Jennifer said, her eyes filling with tears. "But I'd rather leave now than be the reason she gets taken from you." Robert walked around the desk. "You're not the reason. I am." Jennifer shook her head. "You were working, providing for her." "I was hiding." The words came out raw, honest. "After my wife died, I didn't know how to be a father without her. Didn't know how to look at Ava without seeing everything I'd lost. So I ran. I buried myself in work and told myself I was doing it for her. But I was just running from the pain." His voice broke. "And while I was running, my daughter was drowning. And you," he looked at Jennifer, "you were the only one who jumped in after her." Jennifer wiped her eyes. "She's a beautiful child, Mr. Scott. She deserves to be loved, not hurt." "I know." Robert's chest felt tight. "And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making up for the fact that I let her down." They stood there in silence for a moment. Then Jennifer spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do we do now?" Robert looked at the papers on his desk, at the lies, at the twisted truth. "We fight," he said. "We show the court exactly what happened. We show them who Diane really is. And we show them that Ava is safe here, with us." Jennifer nodded, but her hands were trembling. "She's going to come after me," she said quietly. "She's going to dig up everything from my past. Things I'm not proud of. Things I've tried to leave behind. Then we'll face it together." Robert's voice was firm. "Whatever she throws at us, we face it together." Jennifer looked up at him. "Why are you doing this? Why are you risking everything for me?" "Because you risked everything for my daughter." Robert's eyes held hers. "Because you did what I should have done. And because if I lose you, I lose the person who's been keeping Ava's heart beating." Footsteps in the hallway. They both turned to see Ava standing in the doorway. She'd changed out of the uniform finally. Now she wore her favorite sweater, the yellow one her mother gave her. "Are you leaving, Miss Jennifer?" Her voice was small, scared. Jennifer knelt down immediately. "No, sweetheart. I'm not going anywhere." "Promise?" Jennifer pulled Ava into her arms. "I promise." Ava buried her face in Jennifer's shoulder. "I don't want you to go. I don't want to lose you too." Robert watched them. his daughter, and the woman who'd saved her, and he made a decision right there. Whatever it took, whatever the cost, he would protect them both. Because family isn't just blood. It's the people who stay when everything falls apart. 3 weeks later, they sat in family court. The room was smaller than Robert expected, colder, the kind of place where lives were decided by strangers in suits. Diane sat across the aisle with her lawyer, perfectly dressed, perfectly composed. She looked like the victim, like the woman who'd been wronged. Robert's lawyer, Martin Chen, leaned over and whispered, "Remember, stay calm, let the truth speak." But Robert's hands were shaking, because sitting beside him was Ava, wearing her yellow sweater, holding Jennifer's hand so tight her knuckles were white. The judge entered, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense expression. Judge Harrison. She looked at the papers in front of her, then at the people in her courtroom. "Let's begin." Diane's lawyer went first. He painted a picture of a negligent father, a man who abandoned his daughter for months at a time, a household in chaos, an employee who overstepped boundaries and manipulated a vulnerable child. Robert listened to himself being torn apart. Then it was their turn. Martin stood. "Your Honor, we'd like to present evidence." He played the security footage. The courtroom went silent. On the screen, Diane grabbed Ava's arm, screamed at her, forced her into the uniform, watched with satisfaction as the child scrubbed the floor on her knees. Robert heard someone in the gallery gasp. Diane's face went pale. Then Martin called witnesses. Mrs. Delgado from Child Protective Services took the stand. "I've interviewed the child multiple times. She's bonded with Miss Gibson in a healthy, protective way. The abuse came from Mrs. Scott, not from neglect by the father or manipulation by the employee." Ava's teacher, Miss Brennan, was next. Ava was withdrawn all last year, anxious. She barely spoke in class. But in the last few weeks, since her father came home and Mrs. Scott left, she's completely changed. She's smiling again, participating. She told me that Miss Jennifer taught her she was worth loving. Robert's throat tightened. Then Dr. Raymond, the child psychologist. "This is a classic case of emotional abuse from a step-parent and a protective attachment formed with a caregiver. Jennifer Gibson provided what we call a protective factor. She quite literally may have saved this child's psychological well-being." Finally, Martin called Jennifer. She walked to the stand slowly, her hands folded. She looked small up there, vulnerable. Diane's lawyer stood. "Miss Gibson, isn't it true you have a criminal record?" Jennifer didn't flinch. "I was arrested when I was 16. I stole baby formula and diapers for my little sister because our mother was sick and we had no money. The charges were dropped after I completed community service. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through school." The lawyer tried to twist it, make it sound worse than it was, but Jennifer's voice stayed steady. "I'm not ashamed of protecting my sister, just like I'm not ashamed of protecting Ava." "Did you develop feelings for Mr. Scott?" the lawyer pressed. "I developed love for a child who needed someone." Jennifer's eyes were clear. "That's all I've ever wanted, to make sure she knew she wasn't alone." Diane's lawyer sat down. Then Martin asked one question. "Miss Gibson, why did you stay?" Jennifer's voice broke slightly. "Because when you see a child suffering, you don't look away. You don't calculate the cost. You stay, even when it's hard. Even when no one's watching, you stay." The courtroom was silent. Judge Harrison made a note. Then she looked up. "I'd like to speak with the child. In chambers." Robert's heart stopped. Ava stood, still holding Jennifer's hand. "It's okay, sweetheart," Jennifer whispered. "Just tell her the truth." Ava nodded and followed the judge through the side door. And Robert sat there, waiting, praying that his daughter's voice would finally be heard. Ava was in the judge's chambers for 20 minutes. To Robert, it felt like a lifetime. When the door finally opened, Ava walked out with red eyes but something else in her face, something lighter, like she'd finally been allowed to put down a weight she'd been carrying alone. Judge Harrison followed her out and took her seat. The courtroom held its breath. "I've made my decision," she said. Robert's heart pounded so hard he could hear it in his ears. "The petition for custody is denied." Diane's face crumbled. "The evidence is clear," Judge Harrison continued. "Mrs. Scott engaged in emotional and physical abuse of this child. Miss Gibson acted with courage and compassion in protecting her. Mr. Scott, while absent, has taken immediate and decisive action to ensure his daughter's safety." She looked directly at Robert. "Your daughter doesn't need a perfect father. She needs a present one. Be that man." Robert nodded, unable to speak. "As for Miss Gibson," the judge's voice softened, "you did what too few people have the courage to do. You saw a child in pain, and you refused to look away. That's not manipulation. That's love." Jennifer's tears finally fell. "A restraining order will be issued. Mrs. Scott is not to contact the child or come within 500 feet of the family home." Judge Harrison brought down her gavel. "This case is closed." The courtroom erupted in quiet relief. Robert turned to Ava and pulled her into his arms. She clung to him, crying into his shoulder, not from sadness this time, but from something that felt like freedom. "I'm here, baby," he whispered. "I'm not going anywhere ever again." 6 months later, Christmas morning. The house felt different now, warm, full of laughter that echoed off the walls and actually meant something. Robert sat on the floor by the tree with Ava, wrapping paper scattered everywhere. She was opening gifts with the kind of joy he'd forgotten children could have, pure, unguarded, real. Jennifer came in carrying mugs of hot chocolate, wearing comfortable clothes, not a uniform. Never a uniform again. Robert had made her Ava's legal guardian, given her a title that matched what she'd always been, family. "Miss Jennifer, look!" Ava held up a small ornament she'd made in art class, a tiny angel with words written on it in careful handwriting. "Family is who stays." Jennifer knelt beside her. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Can we put it on the tree?" "Of course." They hung it together, right in the front, where everyone could see. Robert watched them, his daughter, and the woman who'd saved her. The doorbell rang. Robert's parents arrived, arms full of gifts and warmth. His mother hugged Jennifer like she was her own daughter. "Thank you," she whispered to Jennifer. "Thank you for loving her when we didn't know she needed it." They gathered around the table for dinner. The long table that used to feel cold and empty now felt full, alive. Robert stood, raising his glass. "6 months ago, I thought I had everything," he said. "Money, success, power, but I was empty. I'd lost sight of what actually mattered." He looked at Ava. "My daughter showed me what courage looks like. She survived something no child should have to face." Then, at Jennifer. "And this woman, she showed me what love really means. Not words, not promises, but showing up, staying, protecting someone else's child like she was your own." His voice broke. "I don't deserve either of you, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of you." Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. Ava climbed into Robert's lap and whispered, "I love you, Daddy." "I love you too, baby, so much." Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, Robert stood in Ava's doorway watching her sleep. She looked peaceful, safe, like a child should look. Jennifer appeared beside him, her voice soft. "She's going to be okay." "Because of you," Robert said. "Because of all of us," Jennifer corrected. "Because you came home. Because you chose to see. Because you fought for her." Robert looked at Jennifer, really looked at her, this woman who'd asked for nothing but had given everything. "I don't know what we'd do without you," he said quietly. Jennifer smiled. "You'll never have to find out." They stood there together, in the quiet, and Robert thought about how wrong he'd been about everything. Success wasn't built in boardrooms. It was built in moments like this, in bedtime stories, and hot chocolate, and showing up, even when it's hard. Family wasn't just biology. It was choice. It was the people who stayed when everyone else walked away. And love, real love, wasn't about grand gestures or expensive gifts. It was kneeling beside a frightened child and whispering, "You're not alone." It was coming home. It was staying. It was being present even when you'd failed before. Robert looked at the ornament on the tree downstairs, glowing softly in the light. Family is who stays. And for the first time in years, he finally understood what that meant.